Inventory. Do you scream when you hear that term? Depending on what your economic stance is, inventory management can be a massive fear or an extreme blessing. While the number varies, one can assume that it is very likely that about 50% of an organization's assets are tied up in inventory. This can be a scary thought and a present cost to maintain. Were there other opportunities you could have invested in? Maybe. As such, inventory is sometimes considered to be a risk as well as an asset. So, does that mean we eliminate it all? No. It means that we must learn to manage it and find ways to convert those assets into revenue and value. The only way to do this is to first understand that inventory must not be managed as either an opportunity or a risk. It must be managed as both. You must ensure that inventory is available when it's needed and still balance the fine line of minimizing the cost to create, acquire, and hold your inventory. Over the next few modules, we will dig in and determine how we can manage all different types of inventory. We'll clarify some of the most common aspirations of inventory, break down and define the language of inventory, and move from high-level or strategic inventory guidelines to the frontline management of each individual inventory SKU. With that in mind, one of the best ways to align a team in the management of inventory is to help them understand what inventory does for an organization. Much like a vision does for a company, clarifying the purpose of inventory can be empowering. Number 1. The primary purpose of inventory management is to ensure there is enough goods or materials to match the needs of demand without creating any excess inventory. When this occurs, external customers can depend on an organization to have products available when they need them and have them delivered on time. In addition to this, internal customers can match the needs of their demand. They receive the right product in the right quantity at the right time. This allows them to continue producing at a rate that the external customers can trust. Number 2, protecting against supply chain shortages and delays in delivery. The theory of constraints teaches us that a supply chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and accessibility to components, subassemblies, parts, and raw materials can sometimes face industry disruptions, which cause a supply chain to slow or even stop. That's why many companies will stockpile different types of materials to protect themselves from disruptions and avoid bottlenecks or idling where plants, processes, and operations take place. Number 3, decoupling operations in a process. Subassemblies or partially processed materials are often held at various stages in a process. This can help act as a buffer for operations. These buffers protect an organization when interruptions or breakdowns occur within the supply chain, process, or operations. Maintaining these inventories allows other operations to continue even when a failure exists in other parts of the process. This technique is known as decoupling. Number 4, taking advantage of volume discounts or purchases. Many suppliers offer discounts based on certain quantity breaks because large orders tend to reduce total processing and shipping costs, while also allowing suppliers to take advantage of economies of scale in their own production processes. While these bulk purchases may in fact reduce transportation and purchasing costs, they will also increase inventory holding costs. As such, you must check to make sure the cost of any direct materials is lower overall than purchasing and transportation costs. If it is, this will reduce production costs as well as the cost of goods sold. Last but not least, another purpose of inventory for many organizations is to avoid lengthy setups and changeovers, so that a company can run machines longer. When an organization sets up machines once and runs large batches, they can avoid the effects of lengthy changeovers and run lines without interruption. In addition to this, longer production runs allow an organization to maximize their capacity utilization. As a reminder, techniques like reduce or SMED can help organizations improve changeover speed as well as reduce downtime. Also, please ask yourself before you run machines for lengthy periods of time, is maximizing my capacity really an improvement if there is no demand associated with any of it? Well, we've covered a lot here in this introduction. Now, as you ponder the different purposes of inventory, we'd like to invite you to answer the following question in the community, comments, or upcoming assignments. What is the main purpose of inventory at my place of work? Thanks again for watching, everyone, and don't forget to stay active in the community. Visit regularly, sign up, or subscribe, and keep coming back to find more solutions that ignite your power. Inventory is managed on many different levels, from strategic or aggregate inventory management to item-level SKUs. Every organization will set different goals. Every organization also needs a place to start. A goal is defined in one way as something that you are trying to do or achieve. In the case of inventory management, organizations should typically set no more than 3 to 5 strategic goals. We will suggest a few to start your inventory management journey. The most basic sense of inventory management is focused on meeting the needs of various customers. This means having the right inventory at the right time and in the right amount without creating excess. This goal or vision, though not specific, defines perfectly how an organization can effectively maximize their inventory investments. For any organization to be successful, they must find ways to be profitable. Inventory must align with this and ensure that items are being sold and not tying up revenue for long periods of time. Next, inventory must support the business from 4 different perspectives. From a customer perspective, it must allow operations to have efficient fill rates with minimal cancellation. From an internal or operational perspective, inventory needs to keep each operational function flowing. From a financial perspective, it must add value and generate revenue while still allowing the business to not lock up too many resources. And finally, inventory should always give a company opportunities to learn and grow. Last but not least, inventory needs to be kept current. You may have some customers who are interested in buying older forms of inventory, but in general, obsolete inventory will not move. When inventory is current and ready to be sold, it enables an organization to sustain profits and continuously improve. Remember, these goals are generalized and apply to almost all organizations. For you, however, it is important that these are only a starting point. As you learn and develop, you should clarify your goals and hone in on opportunities that are specific to you. With that being said, we'd like to invite you to answer the following question in the community, comments, or upcoming assignments. What inventory management goal do you feel is most important and why? Remember, your response does not have to be one that we mention. It can be specific to you. Thanks again for watching, everyone, and don't forget to stay active in the community, visit regularly, sign up or subscribe, and keep coming back to find more solutions that ignite your power. See you in the next lecture. WIP, FG, and raw materials. Some may be familiar with these terms, but inventory has a language that can confuse many. In this section, we will try to clarify the language of inventory and help you understand how the different terms are used. Let's start by explaining that inventory, whether a finished good or a raw material, begins with a certain amount of value. As transformation occurs, value is added to the inventory. Many of the terms that we will explain depend on either where in the transformation process the inventory lies, where in the supply chain it is located, or what the function of the inventory is. Keep this in mind as we review the language of inventory. In the next few sections, we will review terms like raw materials, work in progress, finished goods, in transit or pipeline inventory, and MRO or maintenance, repair, and operations inventory. To make this simple and comprehensive, we will cover each of these in individual videos. Now, before we go, we'd like to hear from each of you. So, here's a question for you. We'd like to invite you to answer the following question in the community, comments, or upcoming assignments. What type of inventory for you is most common, and how do you think understanding the language of inventory could benefit the supply chain and your industry? Thanks for watching, everyone, and don't forget to stay active in the community and visit often. We'll see you in the next lecture. Raw materials, components, and subassemblies are where inventory begins. As you know, inventory, whether a raw material or a finished product, has some value to it. As the raw material is transformed, more value is added to it. With this in mind, a raw material is any purchased, supplied, or extracted item that will eventually be transformed via a manufacturing or transformative process. The raw material or materials are generally converted into components or a finished product. Let's look at an example. As you can see, this sheet is a raw material that is being prepared for the transformative process. Another example of a raw material is in the form of extracted materials. Here we can see extracted materials in a facility. Keep in mind that raw materials are different from raw data. Raw data is found in the information side of a value stream, not in the materials side. The concept is the same though. Raw materials typically are found in a supplier's possession awaiting shipment to a manufacturer. If the raw material is at a facility, they typically are waiting for processing or some other type of transformative process to begin. Extracted materials can also be found in different areas of the land, labs, or other areas. Components are a little different from raw materials. For example, computers are made up of many different parts, such as a motherboard, CPU, RAM, and hard drive. Each of these parts are made up of smaller parts. We call these smaller parts components. A component could be a raw material, subassembly, or a part. Components go into a higher level assembly, item, or part. Some examples of components might be hardware, batteries, welding materials, or seals. Let's now turn our attention to subassemblies and answer the question, what is a subassembly? A subassembly is used to build an assembly. A subassembly is not a component. It is an assembly that is used in a higher level of a bill of materials. Subassemblies could be one component or a number of components that are used and assembled into a unit and form a larger part or higher level assembly. For example, if we were building a car, the end item or independent requirement is the car, with many subassemblies. One subassembly is the tires. The subassembly of tires goes into the car assembly. As an aside, the subassembly of tires includes components such as the rubber tire, the rim, and the lug nuts. We've now learned about raw materials, components, and subassemblies. These are all forms of inventory. Now, before we go, we'd like to invite you to answer the following question in the community, comments, or upcoming assignments. What raw material, components, or subassembly examples can you think of? We look forward to hearing your responses, and we'll see you in the next lecture. Finished goods are products or end items that are sold as a complete item or unit. These items are commonly subject to a customer order, sales order, or purchase order that is linked directly to a customer. Finished goods and products are an extension of your inventory. They are materials or products that have reached a point in either the manufacturing or transformative process where they are available for consumption. You can calculate finished goods using a formula that will also help create an inventory ratio, which determines the value of your goods for sale. Finished goods inventory is generally considered a short-term asset. Short-term assets are expected to sell in less than a year as opposed to long-term assets, which are typically investments that will be kept for longer than a year. Let's look at an example of finished goods. Finished goods are based on a number of different criteria that are specific to a company. For example, Care Bear Cafe is a company that bakes different types of cookies, cakes, and pastries. While the cafe's finished goods are the baked goods that are complete and ready to be sold, the assets that contribute to the finished goods include various ingredients for baking, cookware, and any labor needed to produce the finished goods. Another example might be a car manufacturer. The car manufacturer's finished goods would include the end item car or items that are available directly to the consumer. You may be thinking, how do I calculate the total amount of finished goods inventory? Well, let's take a look. Calculating your finished goods inventory can help you better understand the assets that you have on hand. In addition, it can help reveal waste and allow you to assess where you stand in terms of profits. Performing an analysis of product input versus product output can give you a clear view of mismatches in input and output balance, as well as make sure that inventory is not being produced at a quicker rate than it can be sold. One more benefit with regards to calculating finished goods is that it prevents selling items that are not in stock or available for orders. You're probably wondering, what is the formula? The formula is cost of goods manufactured minus cost of goods sold plus previous period finished goods, and that will equal finished goods inventory. Let's look at an example from Care Bears Cafe. Let's say that Care Bears Cafe bakes $2,000 in delicious treats. Let's then say they sell $1,000 worth of treats. Now, on the previous day, the cafe finds that they had $500 in treats. Working with our formula, we apply the following. $2,000 in cost of goods manufactured minus $1,000 in cost of goods sold equals $1,000. Now we must add the finished goods inventory from the previous period, which was $500. That means that Care Bears Cafe currently has $1,500 in finished goods inventory. Keep in mind that templates for any equation are available in either the resource section, assignments, or the description of the video. Managing inventory can be quite complex, especially as finished goods inventory grows. For these types of situations, you may consider looking into inventory management software. You now know what finished goods inventory is, why it's beneficial to calculate, and a formula that you can use to calculate your finished goods inventory. Don't forget that a template is available in the resource section, assignment section, or the description of this video. So check it out. Also, we'd like to leave you with a fun little challenge. You can answer the question in the community, comments, or upcoming assignments. Assuming you have $5,000 in cost of goods manufactured, $3,000 in cost of goods sold, and your previous period's finished goods inventory totaled $250. What would your finished goods inventory be? Share your answer in the community, comments, or upcoming assignments, and we will see you in the next video. Bye now. Is inventory that enters your facility considered work in progress? In this section, we will dig into one of the largest forms of inventory in an organization, work in progress inventory. Let's begin by defining the term work in progress. Work in progress or process refers to one form of inventory. WIP, as it is often referred to, is the work that is in process or production at a stage that falls between raw material and finished product. To put it another way, WIP is when an organization has possession of raw materials and they have moved those raw materials into production to begin the transformative process. WIP can be located all throughout an organization, from released raw materials up to the point just before inventory becomes a finished product. Work in progress may also include goods that are not complete, such as partially finished goods, semi-finished goods, and items that have begun processing but not reached a finished state yet. An example of partially finished goods is any product that is waiting, stored, or in queue in a partially complete form. These semi-finished goods are not considered complete until they complete their transformative process and have met the required specifications of a completed product. Let's break down this idea of work in progress. A company acquires some raw materials inventory. It is waiting to be manufactured. No value is being added in this waiting stage. Now, let's say the company releases a work order and this material is placed on a machine and begins the transformative process. Value is now being added to it. In this exact moment that these raw materials entered production, they now become WIP. How about parts that are sitting, waiting to be finished? Well, This depends entirely on whether they have started production or not. If a supplier's finished product is received but has not started production, it is still considered a raw material at the facility that received it. When that raw material enters production, it now becomes WIP. Let's now consider a unique circumstance. Let's say that a company operates in an assemble-to-order environment. In fact, let's say it's a sandwich shop. We have sliced turkey, roasted chicken, and tuna. We also have condiments such as mustard, mayonnaise, and a few others too. In addition to this, there are many different types of sliced cheese. All of the sandwich supplies are prepared in the morning and then placed in various bins until the customer arrives. Since the sandwich supplies are decoupled from the actual sandwich assembly process, a customer can custom order what they want. Now, let's focus on the roasted chicken. Is this item considered a raw material, work in progress, or a finished good? This item, like all the other items that were prepared in the morning, is considered work in progress. Even though they are staged at different points in the process to decouple assembly, they were prepared in the morning and are therefore considered semi-finished. One last thing to note. If you have trouble with inventory, especially WIP, continuous improvement strategies like Lean and Six Sigma help to reduce inventory and work in progress. You now know what work in progress inventory is. But before we go, we'd like to give you a little challenge. We'd like to invite you to answer the following question in the community, comments, or upcoming assignments. What examples of work in progress can you think of? Share your answers in the community, comments, or upcoming assignments, and we'll see you soon. In-transit or pipeline inventory is inventory that is in transit. Typically, the inventory that has left the shipping dock of the seller or supplier but not yet reached the receiving dock of the buyer or customer. Any inventory that is in the pipeline is inventory that is moving within the supply chain. The idea helps clarify between the buyer and supplier whether the buyer or seller of goods has taken possession, as well as identifying who is paying for the transportation. A best practice is for either the buyer or supplier to record the inventory that is in transit in some type of log for accounting. Let's look at an example. Lean Strategies International LLC ships $5,000 of merchandise to K&K on November 18th. The terms of delivery are FOB or Freight on Board shipping point. The minute this inventory leaves Lean Strategies International LLC's facility and it is in transit or movement to the next destination, it becomes pipeline or in-transit inventory. These FOB terms mean that K&K takes ownership of the inventory when it leaves Lean Strategies International LLC shipping dock. Lean Strategies International LLC should record a sale transaction on November 18th, and K&K should record an inventory receipt on the same date as well. This will help keep track of what inventory is in transit or in the pipeline, and that's it. In transit or pipeline inventory. Now, before we go, we would like to give you a little challenge. We'd like to invite you to answer the following question in the community, comments, or upcoming assignments. If a facility drives an item to ship on an airplane, when does it become in-transit inventory? Explain your answer in the community, comments, or upcoming assignments. And don't forget to visit the community often. interact, engage, and learn. If possible, please consider subscribing, and we will see you next time right here where you can find solutions that ignite your power. Raw materials, work in progress, and finished goods are the main types of inventory you will hear about. You've also learned about maintenance, repair, and operations inventory, as well as inventory that is in transit. Interesting enough, how you classify inventory can differ based on where it falls in the supply chain or internal operations of an organization. For example, a company may pull raw materials in the form of trees. Next, they transform the tree into lot lumber that may be used in construction. While the lumber is a finished good for this company, it is a raw material for the construction company. Another example might be a wheel. One car facility may use a wheel on a car to complete the end item, and they may use the wheel as finished goods to sell directly to customers. As you can see, these two examples of inventory, from both a supply chain perspective and an internal value stream perspective, have value added to it in the transformation stages. However, inventory is not always transforming, and that is the goal. Eliminate all points where the item is not transforming and minimize any activities where the inventory is waiting or transporting. One of the best ways to minimize these forms of waste as inventory flows through the transformation process is by implementing the strategy known as Lean. Lean is a continuous improvement strategy that a company embarks on to maximize customer value and minimize waste. As you pull waste out of the different value streams in your organization, you will reduce tied up capital, lead times, and the amount of inventory that you must carry. So remember that you first need to understand the context of your inventory before you classify it. Now, before we go, we would like to give you a little challenge. What examples of inventory flow can you think of? Share your thoughts in the community, comments, or upcoming assignments. We look forward to hearing from each of you, and we'll see you in the next lecture right here on Lean Strategies International LLC. MRO inventory stands for Maintenance, Repair, and Operations Inventory. In general, it is used to maintain or repair items that are used in operations. This can include all the supplies of an organization uses for its production processes that do not become part of an end product or finished goods. MRO inventory is not a raw material. It is not work in progress, and it is not a finished product. MRO forms of inventory can include equipment, spare parts for production, consumables, office supplies, janitorial supplies, technology, and safety equipment. As you can see from these examples, MRO is used to support the production and operations and keep things running. Another key difference between MRO inventory and the other types of inventory is that MRO items do not generate revenue. Instead, they support the generation of revenue. With this understanding of MRO inventory, we should now turn our attention to answering the question, what happens if maintenance, repair, and operations inventory is neglected? To put it simply, MRO inventory should not be neglected. Even though it does not directly contribute to revenue, if MRO inventory is not monitored, it can cause big problems for a company. Issues like not meeting deadlines, frustrated customers, and downtime are some of the more common examples. These may not seem like a big impact, but let's put the impact into perspective. In most organizations, MRO represents about 5 to 10% of the inventory in the entire company. For a company that has $100,000 in inventory, that would mean anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 is spent on MRO. While this is not a significant amount for many, if left unchecked and a stockout occurs, this small amount can really add up. Let's say your company uses fluids like coolant and oil to run machines. Without it, employees cannot do their work. Now, let's imagine that the coolant and oil is neglected and employees discover there is a stockout. Now, in addition to the cost of ordering fluids, your line cannot run and it is losing money. So, what can we do to prevent these catastrophic losses? Preventing excessive and wasteful spending with regards to MRO inventory is not much different from other types of inventory. Monitoring levels with cycle counting or a periodic approach helps keep an eye on things, but these are not the only methods. When managing MRO inventory, in-house methods such as just-in-time and regular ABC analysis are very effective as well. While these methods require resources to perform, they allow internal employees to stay in the loop, provide input, and learn as they manage MRO levels. Another very effective way to manage MRO inventory is through a vendor managed inventory, or VMI. Vendor managed inventory programs are a powerful way to leverage an organization's strengths and focus on your core competencies. Vendor managed inventory places the responsibility of selected services and/or items on a chosen supplier. This hybrid approach to managing MRO items allows an organization to either offload it all or utilize only the internal resources needed to monitor and manage supplies. Of course, from a much more strategic approach, companies need to ensure that they prioritize essential items, measure with key performance indicators, and keep things as lean as they can be, and you will have all the MRO you need while not draining resources on stockpiles of MRO inventory. You now know what maintenance, repair, and operations inventory is, what the impact could be if it is neglected, and a few of the more general methods of managing your MRO inventory. But before we go, we would like to give you a little challenge. We'd like to invite you to answer the following question in the community, comments, or upcoming assignments. What forms of MRO inventory do you have, and how do you manage it? We look forward to hearing from each of you, and we'll see you in the next lecture right here on Lean Strategies International LLC, where you can find solutions that ignite your power. One of the core purposes of any inventory management strategy is to ensure that inventory levels are balanced in such a way that they can support demand. Inventory is categorized by demand patterns, which create the need for inventory and drive that need through an organization. There are two types of demand: independent demand and dependent demand. Let's look a little closer at these two forms of inventory demand. Independent demand is an item that generates demand all by itself. In other words, it is not dependent or related to any other form of demand or item. Some examples of independent demand might be finished goods, replacement parts, parts used for testing, service or repair parts, and end items. Let's look a little deeper. Here is an example that will be easy for you to understand. Let's say you call your favorite pizza shop and order your favorite pizza. When you get your pizza, you see your favorite toppings, cheese, sauce, and the pizza pie crust. The independent demand is the end item pizza that you love so much. The entire pizza is what you ordered, so its demand is unrelated to anything else. However, when we dig into our pizza, we learn that many of the toppings, sauces, and cheese are used on other pizzas as well. These items are known as dependent items because they have other dependencies or other related demands. Let's look a little deeper at dependent demand. Dependent demand is the demand for components, raw materials, or other sub-assemblies that are either related to or come from a bill of materials structure. To put it simply, dependent demand is related to other items and is typically generated from end items. This demand does not occur on its own. It occurs when there is demand for a parent item. Another thing to note about dependent demand is that it should not be forecasted. It is generally calculated using a material requirements planning system. In other words, it is calculated. Let's look at our pizza again as an example. Every pizza requires 1 pizza pie crust, 16 ounces of cheese, and 10 fluid ounces of sauce. In addition, when a customer orders a pizza, they get 10 pieces of each topping. So let's say a customer orders 2 pepperoni pizzas. These are the independent demand. Our system would automatically calculate that we need 2 pizza pie crusts, 32 ounces of cheese, and 20 fluid ounces of sauce. We would also need 20 pieces of pepperoni. As you can see, the dependent demand is directly linked to the bill of materials for the end item and therefore can be calculated. Keep in mind that many companies will have parts that are both dependent and independent demand. For example, let's say we work at a car factory. Our car factory puts tires on cars to complete the car. In this case, the tire is a dependent demand and the complete car is independent demand. Now let's say that we also sell tires directly to customers. In this case, the tire is an example of independent demand. This makes it very important for you to understand and be able to identify or find where the demand is being driven from. We will talk more about this in later videos. You now know what dependent and independent demand is. Now, before we go, we would like to invite you to answer a question. What examples of independent and dependent demand can you think of? Share your thoughts in the community, comments, or upcoming assignments, and we'll see you in the next lecture. Inventory in an organization has many different purposes. It can be used to buffer slow-moving lines and keep them running smoothly, and it can be used to decouple a supplier and customer. Whatever the reason is, you must understand the different ways that inventory can be used in an organization. If you would like to manage your inventory, over the next few modules, we will look at some of the different ways and purposes that inventory could be used and help you understand the different functions inventory may take in your organization. You will learn what it means to decouple inventory, what it means to buffer inventory, what safety stock is, what hedging is, and what lot sizing or batch inventory is. Remember that the function of inventory may be different from company to company. Now, before we get started, we would like to invite you to answer the following question in the community, comments, or upcoming assignments. Do you carry safety stock? If so, what are the benefits? Thanks again for watching, everyone, and don't forget to visit often, and we will see you in the next lecture. When something is said to be coupled, it would mean the two items are connected and interdependent on one another. In the case of processes and supply chains, there can be both positives and negatives with regards to coupled inventory and decoupled inventory. As you know, demand can fluctuate, shortages will occur, people call in sick, and shipping routes are sometimes detoured. There is a long list of issues that can disrupt both internal processes and supply chains. Many of these disruptions can be costly. Decoupling inventory can protect an organization against inventory disruptions, as well as allow an organization to continue functioning when supply chain failures occur. Decoupling inventory is also a useful method to help minimize or level the playing field of some manufacturing or supply chain processes that move faster than other ones. So, what does it mean to decouple inventory? Decoupling inventory is a technique that is used when extra inventory is set aside at different stages of a process or supply chain. While holding inventory can be costly, this technique is frequently used so that low stock situations or breakdowns at one stage of a process doesn't slow or halt other operations. Essentially, decoupling is a technique used to create independence between suppliers and customers. Many companies decouple inventory to protect all stages of production. This means that even when one operation has delays or gaps in inventory, it does not affect other operations. In the most basic sense, decoupling allocates inventory at different operations to prevent bottlenecks or constraints. You may be thinking, how does this apply to a lean organization? Well, supermarkets are a form of decoupling. In-place inventory is a form of decoupling, and receiving in location is a form of decoupling. Remember, lean organizations still have inventory. The difference is that they do everything possible to minimize the waste of inventory. So, how does decoupling work? Decoupling works by strategically finding and establishing what are known as decoupling points. For example, a make-to-stock environment may decouple by stocking in units, while an assemble-to-order environment would decouple by stocking sub-assemblies, components, and other needed items to complete the customer's order. Another example may be a make-to-order shop. These companies would not decouple finished goods because they are made to order. Instead, they decouple by stocking raw materials. This allows them to receive an order and pull materials right away. This helps reduce both lead times on supply chain as well as other disruptions that may occur. Let's look at some examples to help us understand this concept of decoupling in our inventory. Let's say you are a food supplier and you operate a number of different lines. Your lines process a great deal of food every single day. Now let's consider how quickly a breakdown can add up. Luckily, if you decouple your lines, you can set aside some inventory so that when issues arise, your lines can continue to run independently. For example, if a machine breaks down, you can stop the line and repair it while shipping your requirements like you normally would. Another example might be an automobile manufacturer who assembles separate parts to create a finished good. They decouple inventory so that one line of assembly, like a tire assembly, does not cause a constraint in other parts of the assembly. For example, a dash assembly. As you know, things do not always go as planned. Issues may arise when one operation works at different speeds than others. Decoupling inventory can cushion a company's inventory against potential issues they may have. You now know what decoupling inventory is and a little about how it works. Keep in mind that decoupling is a form of buffering, which we will discuss in upcoming videos. Now, before we go, we would like to invite you to answer the following question in the community, comments, or upcoming assignments. Do you decouple inventory? If so, how does it work for you? We look forward to hearing your answers right here on Lean Strategies International LLC. Until next time, my friends, keep on improving, and we will keep on giving you solutions that ignite your power. Imagine a smooth flowing process. The work is easy, employees are happy, and inventory seems to flow like a stream of water. Now think what would happen if just one operation in the process couldn't keep up with the others. Or a machine breaks down. Now, your flow is halted and a lot of waiting occurs. Many traditional manufacturers in these cases rely on inventory buffers to prevent a complete line stop and keep lines running. So, what is an inventory buffer? Buffers are very similar to decoupling points. The main difference is that a buffer, as noted in the theory of constraints, includes both material and time buffers. In a practical sense, a buffer lessens or moderates the impact of something. In the case of inventory management, a buffer is extra inventory of either raw material or final product a company maintains as a protection against unforeseen circumstances. This lessens the impact of having no inventory available. Here's an example. You go into your favorite pizza shop, and they have cheese, pepperoni, and sausage hot and ready for the customer to grab at a moment's notice. These are buffer at the end of the line. Many times a buffer is not yet complete and simply awaiting further processing. This allows an organization to have specific hold points where they can use the unfinished goods to level a process or prevent a stop in the line. In simple words, we can say it is the excess inventory that a company keeps in reserves to protect itself against an uncertain future. As noted earlier, buffers can be maintained as material buffers or time buffers. These buffers in both cases are best placed at constraint points or any point in a process where the operation may need a little extra support. These could be shipping points, convergent points, or divergent points. Simply put, buffers are placed where a process needs help. Some advantages of this technique are protection against fluctuations in supply and demand, minimization of any disruptions that may occur in production, more stable revenue flow for a company, and inventory can lower the impact of lost opportunities by having the inventory readily available for customers. Of course, With every advantage, there are disadvantages that you may need to consider as well. Some of the disadvantages might include maintaining buffers can tie up resources and increase overhead costs. Maintaining buffers also uses up more space. And finally, maintaining buffers only solves the symptom but does not address the root cause of issues like late deliveries, broken machines, and unbalanced or slow operations. So, let's say that you've weighed the advantages and disadvantages out and you've decided you will hold some buffer stock. How much should you hold? It would be great if there was a set amount that everyone could go off of, but the reality is that there isn't. Setting a buffer has its risks, but there are a few best practices that you can use to establish your inventory buffer. We will mention them briefly in this video and cover them more in later videos. First and foremost is fixed inventory buffers. This one is pretty straightforward. In this, the organization uses the support of experienced employees like planners. There is no formula. Instead, you decide on the buffer amount on maximum daily usage in a certain time period. Your buffer will stay the same until it is reviewed again and revised. Next is a time-based calculation. In this, the buffer stock is calculated based on a future expectation. And finally, we have a formula-based calculation. A popular formula that is frequently used to calculate the buffer is based on the average safety stock that a company will need in case of a stockout. This formula, however, does not take into account seasonal fluctuations of demand. And that's it. Buffer inventory. Remember, we will cover more about buffer inventory in later videos. Now, before we go, we would like to invite you to answer the following question in the community, comments, or upcoming assignments. Have you used buffer inventory? If so, how does it work for you? We look forward to hearing your answers right here on Lean Strategies International LLC, and we'll see you next time. Have you ever wondered, what does the word anticipation mean? Stay tuned. In this video, we will answer the question, what is anticipation inventory? The word anticipation is defined in one way as the act of preparing for something. In the case of anticipation inventory, it is the act of preparing for something with regards to inventory. Formally defined, anticipation inventory is inventory that is kept on hand to account for or anticipate expected changes in demand. Spikes in demand generally occur because of seasonality, inflation and deflation, holiday events, current events, political changes, or other major trends. Anticipation inventory is commonly referred to as speculation inventory or smoothing inventory because it is bought in advance to avoid price increase or delays in time. Keep in mind that anticipation inventory is a form of a buffer and therefore must be forecasted. In these cases, it is often a wise decision to use inventory management software. Hold up a second. Did we just use the word forecast? Since forecasts, as we know, are always wrong, one must ask the question, why? Why would a company use anticipation inventory? Let's first think of a retailer increasing its stock of ice cream and cold drinks before summer to anticipate higher sales. How about candy manufacturers who buy extra chocolate in advance of Valentine's Day? Businesses also use anticipation inventory to hedge against expected bumps in prices, shortages of materials, and of course, inflation. While preparing for sales and hedging against price hikes might be a selling point for anticipation inventory, we must also consider the downsides too. First and foremost, carrying inventory costs a business money, so the business must always weigh inventory costs with other financial considerations. In addition to the purchase cost of the inventory, there are storage costs and possibly the costs of setting up needed equipment to handle the inventory you have on hand. Plus, we must always remember that any money invested in inventory will not produce any return until the inventory is sold. To put it simply, inventory ties up capital, and that means the money cannot be used for other things. So, don't let too much anticipation build when building anticipation inventory. Keep it in balance. Okay, let's summarize. Anticipation inventory is any inventory over and above a normal amount of stock that you acquire to cover increased sales, changes in pricing, vacations, shutdowns, or any other anticipated event. You now know what anticipation inventory is and some of the benefits and disadvantages of it. We will most certainly return to this topic in the near future to cover more details. But before we go, I'd like to ask you, the viewer of this video, a question. What examples of anticipation inventory can you think of? Share your thoughts in the community comments or upcoming assignments, and remember, review often and create a trigger that reminds you to come back regularly. Until next time, my friends, keep on improving, and we will keep on giving you solutions that ignite your power. Whether it's materials or information, if the inventory is not there when a customer wants it, chances are they will go somewhere else to find it. Next, revenue is lost, and then it gets worse and worse. For example, if inventory is not available, throughput is decreased, waste is introduced, and supply chains slow down. With that being said, many traditional manufacturers and service providers use a type of inventory known as safety stock to solve these and sometimes catastrophic issues. In this lecture, we will introduce you to safety stock. Stay tuned. Welcome back. While inventory and stocking extra amounts of it does not generally solve the root cause of late deliveries, frustrated customers, slow production, or missed opportunities, it is one of the most frequently used solutions for traditional manufacturers. In the most general sense, safety stock can help offset changes in supply and demand, avoid costly stockouts, reduce the impact of disruptions in supply, lower administrative and ordering costs, cushion against forecast inaccuracies, maintain market share, and create consistency in a company's revenue. So, what is safety stock? Most inventory consists of cyclical stock, or the inventory that is expected to be sold within a given period of time, and safety stock. Safety stock is the extra inventory that is held and used to prevent an out-of-stock situation. It serves as a buffer that protects against fluctuations in supply and demand. This safety stock can help an organization protect against excess demand, delays from suppliers, forecast errors, replenishment failures, downtime, economic constraints, and many other unforeseen circumstances that may occur in supply and demand. Let's look at an example. A local manufacturer was recently featured in a popular manufacturing magazine, and they immediately experienced an increase in demand for their services. As the manufacturer fulfills orders, cycle inventory is depleted faster than usual. This drastically increases the risk of a stockout. As such, the company buffers against a stockout with some extra safety stock. Without safety stock, the company cannot fulfill orders once the regular cycle inventory is gone, and this could create many problems. And that's it. Safety stock. Now, we only went over what safety stock is in this video, but in future videos, we will cover more about how safety stock is calculated, common safety stock challenges, and even some formulas that can help you figure out what safety stock you should consider. So, rest assured, we will return to this topic in the near future. Now, before we go, I'd like to ask you, the viewer of this video, a question. What examples of safety stock can you think of? Share your thoughts in the community comments or upcoming assignments, and remember, review often and create a trigger that reminds you to come back to Lean Strategies videos often. Until next time, my friends, keep on improving, and we will keep on giving you solutions that ignite your power. Have you ever been through a political, economic, social, legal, environmental, or technological change, and you looked at something and thought to yourself, I need to buy as much of that at this price now before things start getting really expensive? Of course you have. We all have. In this lecture, we will talk about a common practice that when applied helps organizations purchase inventory over and above their current needs to maximize their inventory investments. That's right, we will discuss hedge inventory. Stay tuned. Hedge inventory finds its roots in the term hedging. Hedging, which means reducing or controlling risk, is a common practice in many industries and a not so common practice in others. Hedge inventory is actually very similar to anticipation inventory, except there is more risk and quite a bit less certainty in increased demand and decreased supply. Hedge inventory is the excess inventory that is purchased in advance or held in stock as a protection against price increases. The main objective of hedging is reducing or limiting any risk associated with future price fluctuations. A secondary objective of hedging is to take advantage of future price fluctuations. For example, if industry prices are rising, you would want to hedge when the supply cost is low. This helps protect your net profit. There are many reasons that price fluctuations could occur. It may be the simple result of seasonal variations or even sudden market disruptions. Other examples could be changes in exchange rates, political situations, economic promotions, clearance sales, employee strikes, new government policies, and vendor shutdowns. Hedge inventory can also be inventory that is built up for an event that has a very rare chance of happening. Of course, one should weigh the risk closely as this approach is avoided by most businesses since there is no guarantee on return. Some more common practices of hedging are purchasing the always-in-demand commodities like gasoline and grains. These commodities are bought, sold, and traded on a daily basis, and hedging is generally a good way to avoid market fluctuation. Let's look at another example. Let's assume that our example involves a company that depends on a certain commodity. Suppose that K&K's oil is worried about the volatility in the price per barrel of oil. The company would be in deep trouble if the price of oil were to skyrocket, because this would severely impact profits. To protect against this, K&K can enter into a futures contract. This contract hedging tool allows K&K to buy the oil at a specific price at a set future date and time. Now, K&K can budget without worrying about the fluctuating price of oil. Another way that K&K can hedge is by strategically buying up all the barrels of oil and holding the hedge inventory. This now guarantees that if prices fluctuate, K&K's costs will always remain constant and allow them to control their profit margins. In general, there are two basic types or ways of hedging that a company can engage in: hedging inventory for a sale and hedging inventory for a purchase. Hedging inventory for a sale is when an organization hedges inventory so that they can avoid fluctuation in future sales. Hedging inventory for purchase is when a company hedges inventory to avoid future fluctuations in supply or purchases. To summarize, hedge inventory is a method of building up inventory to protect against future events. This requires a great deal of forecasting and speculation and should be done with caution. Remember, inventory, whether hedged or part of a regular cycle, ties up assets. And that's it. Hedge inventory. Now, before you go, I'd like to ask you a question. What examples of hedge inventory can you think of? Share your thoughts in the community, comments, or upcoming assignments, and remember to come back often. We'll see you in the next lecture. Have you ever heard the question, what lot size should we order? Or, what's the lot size of the inventory? In this lecture, we will demystify this question and provide some clarity on what a lot size is. So, stay tuned. Formally defined, lot sizes refer to the quantity of an item ordered for delivery on a specific date or manufactured in a single production run. The size of the lot can vary significantly and is typically determined by demand, but is usually adjusted to a higher quantity so that purchasers can take advantage of volume discounts when purchasing or manufacturing. Also, in general, higher lot sizes result in less expensive transportation costs. In other words, lot size basically refers to the total quantity of a product ordered for manufacturing. A simple example of a lot size is when we buy a pack of 6 sodas. It refers to buying a single lot of 6 sodas. Put another way, the lot size is the amount of a good produced or purchased at one time. Lot size is an important topic in lean manufacturing as well. You see, larger lot sizes and higher setup costs typically drive batch production and push inventory along. Here is an example. Let's say that a salesman would like to make 250 business cards that he can hand out. He assumes that he will use all 250 cards in a year. He later finds out from the card vendor that the most economic print run is 1,000 cards. The setup cost causes 4 years of inventory to be manufactured, and it is very likely that the business cards will be lost, damaged, or the information on the cards will need to be changed or updated in a year. Reducing the lot size and setup costs allows smaller batches to be produced and creates a system where items are pulled through the manufacturing process rather than pushed. Remember, a smaller lot of production is an important part of many lean manufacturing strategies. One-piece flow implies a lot size of 1. Likewise, single-piece flow suggests a lot size of 1 single piece is what will flow forward. You now know what lot size means and how the term could be implied in a lean environment. Now, before you go, I'd like to give you a little challenge. Let's say you have a pallet of 100 items. Each item is wrapped individually, but ships as a pallet. What lot size will you ship if you ship 1 pallet, and how did you come up with your answer? Share your thoughts in the community comments or upcoming assignments, and remember to come back often. We'll see you in the next lecture. Everybody wants to purchase inventory and sell it the same day. Having a high inventory turnover is a good thing, but what happens if the inventory does not turn over efficiently? In this lecture, we will discuss what happens to inventory as it ages. One of the main issues of aging inventory is that as time passes along, most inventory will lose some value. As a reminder, there are 2 basic types of inventory: cycle stock and safety stock. Cycle stock is the inventory that is used to fill demand. As orders are filled, the cycle stock depletes and it must be replenished. To protect against stockouts and increases in demand, many organizations hold what is known as safety stock. This additional inventory helps buffer and protect an organization against unexpected changes, namely increases in demand. While safety stock is a buffer, cycle stock is the normal inventory that a company uses, often called operating inventory or regular inventory. So, what happens when operating inventory is not used up by the end of a cycle? It then becomes excess inventory. The Apex Dictionary 16th edition defines excess inventory as any inventory in the system that exceeds the minimum amount necessary to achieve the desired throughput rate at the constraint, or that exceeds the minimum amount necessary to achieve the desired due date performance. Total inventory equals productive inventory plus protective inventory plus excess inventory. Another way of defining excess inventory is any inventory that has not been sold and that exceeds the projected consumer demand for that product. Excess inventory occurs for a variety of reasons. Some include bad forecasting and predictions, anticipated demand that never occurred, poor inventory management systems, canceled orders, failure to manage the obsolete inventory, lot size purchases to achieve price breaks, long lead times, and sudden shifts in supply and demand. Now, you may be thinking, no big deal, it will be sold eventually. However, excess inventory translates into increased storage costs, lost profits, perishable and deteriorating inventory, loss of inventory investments, loss of time in managing the inventory, and an overall increased risk of your inventory. So, how do companies fix the problem of excess inventory? When excess inventory occurs, most organizations are forced into pushing sales rather than pulling them to demand. This typically involves discounting inventory at rates that will sell quickly in an effort to regain whatever investments have been made. donating the inventory to a local charity, and in extreme cases, companies will find more benefit in zeroing out the excess and simply giving it away or scrapping it out. Keep in mind that managing inventory and building to demand with strategies like lean is the ideal. Whatever the method, you must try and recoup some of your investment, or it could really become a major problem. So, what happens if excess inventory sits on shelves for too long? Excess inventory that does not move or get used up becomes what is known as inactive inventory. Inactive inventory is any excess inventory that has been sitting for a defined period of time. For example, if a piece of stock has not been used for a predetermined amount of time, it could be deemed inactive by the organization. This happens quite often with tools that are not used for a long period of time, components that are not used, and excess finished goods that were bought in large lots for price breaks. So, what do you do with inactive inventory? First and foremost, you must try to recover your investment if possible. Liquidation sales may be one way, recycling materials, or if need be, zero the inactive inventory out and write it off against net profits. We must remember that inventory is an asset, and yet inactive inventory does not generate a profit, which means your assets are tied up in the form of inactive inventory. In addition, this inactive inventory has carrying costs associated with it, material costs, and many others that accumulate more costs. This is why it is oftentimes much more beneficial for an organization to zero the assets that are inactive and use them as a write-off. Keep in mind that all inventory, especially inactive inventory, carries a huge risk of becoming distressed inventory, also known as distressed goods or services. Distressed goods or services are products, services, or even information that are either damaged, at risk of not being sold in a defined time, or close to expiration. Most of these distressed inventory items cannot be sold at full value. Here's an example. Grocery stores sell many perishable goods that are marked with either sell-by dates or expiration dates. When these dates are nearing, your inventory may be at risk of becoming a distressed good. Another example might be concert tickets. If the concert ticket is nearing the performance day and the tickets have not been sold, they may be considered distressed tickets. Last but not least, damaged items. When items are damaged in inventory, they become a distressed good. All of these damaged or near expiration items usually need to be heavily discounted to sell. Now, once your inventory is inactive, it is dead, right? No. Inactive inventory still has some options. However, if inactive inventory is not converted in some way, it will eventually become obsolete or dead inventory. Dead stock, also known as dead inventory or obsolete inventory, refers to items that aren't expected to sell. Typically, if an organization has decided that the inventory is not expected to sell and it is obsolete, the items, services, or information has met some obsolescence criteria that has been established by the organization. Here is an example. If a company makes a product and the inventory is superseded with a new design or model, the old inventory is now considered obsolete. There are a few ways you can deal with obsolete inventory. Some organizations may be able to offload older models at a reduced cost, or many organizations will simply dispose of the obsolete inventory or write the obsolete inventory off. This will reduce assets on hand, which in turn reduces an organization's profit margin. As you can tell, disposing of obsolete inventory is not free. There are disposal fees, lost investments, and time incurred to properly dispose of obsolete items. As such, all organizations should make it a priority to reduce the amount of inventory that becomes obsolete and manage their inventory in such a way that investments yield positive returns for all parties involved. One more thing to note about obsolescence that you must be aware of is items that have surpassed the length of time for which an item remains usable, fit for consumption, or saleable. Most of these items must be disposed of. However, the shelf life, if made visible and trackable, can be a way to monitor items so they do not become obsolete. There is one more phase that occurs when inventory ages, the scrap phase. By definition, scrap is any material or information that is left over and cannot be used outside of specifications and not be reworkable or simply bad. In short, scrap items must be disposed of. They are not reworkable. Materials or information that are scrap cannot be returned to inventory. Here's an example. Let's say you are building a product and your cut is incorrect and it cannot be reworked. This product is now defective and must be scrapped out. Another example might be information that is generated. Let's say a report that is written and printed out. Somewhere in the text, the material contains a mistake. This batch of printout information is now defective and you must scrap it out. With that being said, scrap materials or information are caused by many different factors. Some include procedural errors, mistakes, bad materials, processes that are not effective, and machines that are not up to standard. There are many reasons inventory might need to be scrapped, but the one commonality of all scrap is that you should avoid it. Remember, scrap cannot be reworked. It must be scrapped out and simply is unfixable. For something to be reworked, it needs to be fixable, correctable, or reprocessed to salvage or bring the defective item or information back into an acceptable form. Okay, that's a lot to take in. Let's summarize. Inventory begins in an operational condition, and if left over for a defined period of time, becomes excess inventory. At some point in time, the inventory will then become inactive and quite possibly could later be deemed obsolete. Last but not least, inventory is scrapped. As you can tell, these 5 phases of inventory value is lost as time passes by. This is why it is so important to keep that turnover high and only carry what you need. You now know what happens to inventory as it ages. Before we go, comment below, do you have any inactive or obsolete inventory on hand? If so, have you thought about a 5S project? We look forward to interacting as a community and helping you find solutions that ignite your power. See you soon. One of the best ways to summarize inventory management is in a blog on Oracle's website. Inventory management is the process of orchestrating the flow of goods through a company in a continuous cycle of ordering, storing, producing, selling, and restocking goods. Inventory management is generally performed at 2 levels: aggregate inventory management and item-level inventory management. In aggregate inventory management, companies make decisions between minimizing their inventory costs or holding more inventory to maximize customer service or production efficiency. Aggregate inventory management bridges to item inventory management through policies such as safety stock, and to inventory controls through policies such as ABC classification or order quantities, which take item-level attributes such as cost, lot sizes, and order lead times into account. Companies make this a reality in different ways. One of the ways that an organization can clarify goals for all audiences is through a clearly defined inventory management policy. The inventory management policy is typically a very simple description of an organization's goals, objectives, and plan for how they will manage all levels of inventory in their organization, from an aggregate level all the way down to an itemized level. We must keep in mind that the aggregate level of an organization looks at higher level strategic activities. As such, aggregate inventory management looks to establish and control the overall inventory investment in terms of total dollar value. This can be a complex task and generally requires an organization to focus on 4 different aspects that will help them control their overall level of inventory. The first is to understand what method of inventory valuation will be most beneficial to the organization. Next, a company must find a way to understand their inventory without hours and hours of digging, searching, and analyzing. To do this, a company must establish metrics or key performance indicators that will reveal how well inventory is being managed. Another very important aspect that all organizations must watch closely is how one area of the organization's actions might affect another area of the company. And finally, aggregate inventory management must ensure that people within the organization are always developing, especially in terms of understanding inventory. We call this inventory training. We'll cover these 4 areas in the next few videos, but before we go any further, share with us in the comments, community, or upcoming assignments what 4 areas of aggregate or strategic inventory management do you feel are most important? Remember, answering these questions sparks communication and may allow you to connect with others who have some great answers. This will help us all expand our knowledge and find more solutions that ignite your power. See you in the next video. Inventory valuation is the inventory accounting process that has responsibility for assigning a value to a company's inventory. This is typically managed by a department within accounting that focuses all its efforts on inventory accounting. The main job of this inventory accounting function is to keep the value of inventory recorded and current. This is generally done one of 2 ways. The first being a periodic or yearly interval where inventory is recorded at fixed intervals, and the second being a perpetual method. Perpetual methods update inventory in real time, which tends to keep a more accurate recording of inventory on hand. Without a current understanding of inventory on hand, it would be impossible to control the overall dollar value of inventory. One more thing to note is that both periodic and perpetual recordings use the most common forms of valuation: FIFO, LIFO, and average cost of inventory. We will learn more about these 2 types of recording methods in later videos. For now, let's turn our attention back to valuation and understand why an organization needs to establish a valuation to control and manage inventory. The way a company does its inventory valuation directly impacts its cost of goods sold, gross income, and the monetary value of inventory that is sitting in the company. With this in mind, inventory valuation affects the profitability of a company and its potential value, as presented in its financial statements. This brings us to another reason why valuation must be established. Inventory has a value, and that value is shown on a balance sheet under assets and on an income statement under cost of goods sold. These two financial statements are very good indicators of how a company is performing and where it stands in terms of financial health. In addition to these financial statements, inventory valuation can be used in analysis of inventory turns, as well as when an organization needs to make decisions with regards to building up inventory by investing or drawing it down. Selecting an inventory valuation method is also a very strategic decision because once a company has made its decision, that decision is generally a binding one. The IRS requires companies to commit to one method during their first year of filing taxes and to obtain permission if they want to change the method in subsequent years. This is why it is so important for these financial statements to conform to regular accounting standards. One tip to keep in mind is that while balance sheets and income statements show inventory in the form of raw materials, work in progress, and finished goods, they do not show MRO inventory. Also, it is very important that you talk with a reputable and licensed CPA. While Lean Strategies International LLC understands and is educated in valuation, a licensed CPA can give you the best advice on how your inventory valuation should be calculated. Now, you're probably wondering, what are the different types of inventory valuation? In the next few videos, we will introduce you to the following methods: actual costs, average costs, first in, first out, or FIFO, last in, first out, or LIFO, specific identification, standard costs or costing, and transfer pricing. We'll see you soon. Inventory valuation can make or break a company. It is absolutely essential that the valuation method you choose aligns with the needs of your specific business and the industry it serves. In this video, we will introduce one valuation type known as actual cost valuation. Let's dig in. Actual cost valuation is one of the most basic and frequently used types of valuation because it values inventory based on the actual cost of the item in your inventory. You may hear actual costing referred to as item or batch costing as well. Put very simply, actual costing is the actual cost of an item for all its movements through an organization. This includes, but is not limited to, when the item is sold and received, issued to the production floor, and moved. Actual costing borrows from FIFO by using the dates an item is received in. It then assigns a lot, batch, order, or serial number to each and every item that is received. This unique number travels with the receipt everywhere. This is where actual cost is different from FIFO. Actual cost uses the lot and serial numbers to track and differentiate the actual cost of items that are received on the same day. Ultimately, this enables you to track the actual cost of the items or batches that have a lot or serial number assigned to them. There are many benefits to this approach. One is that it improves the accuracy of both job and item costing and estimating. While you should speak with a professional accountant or a CPA, actual costing is preferred by many manufacturers whose inventory costs fluctuate between inventory purchases. Some examples might be job shops, make-to-order shops, or engineer-to-order manufacturers that often experience drastic changes in their raw material pricing. Let's look at an example of actual costing. K&K is a large pharmaceutical distribution warehouse. K&K tracks inventory as it is received into and out of the warehouse. Each week, K&K receives about 10 orders of a popular virus-fighting capsule. In the first week, the cost of the bottle is $100. These bottles are given a lot number of 1. In week 2, the vendor's pricing changes and the order cost inflates to $125 per bottle. This lot is received in and given a lot number of 2. In the third week, inflation goes down and the bottles again cost $100 per bottle. This order is received in and given a lot number of 3. K&K receives these in and places each of the orders into bins. They use a FIFO method so that the oldest order is used first. Now, let's say that the orders are sold for $500 a bottle without any regard for the cost of each lot. As you can see, the profit in week 1 and 3 will be higher than week 2. Since they use the oldest materials first and the first order is used, then the second, and finally the third, this would be difficult to track actual costs without a lot number. However, K&K wisely assigned lot numbers to the bottles, and so they are better able to control the inventory and track costs as well as profits per bottle. And that's it. Actual costing, or the ability to check the actual cost of an item for all of its movements. Now, before you go, I'd like to ask you a question. If you buy 2 lots of materials, the first at $500 and the second at $600 each, and each of them get labeled with different lot numbers, what is the actual cost of each of the lots of materials? Share your thoughts in the community, comments, or upcoming assignments. And remember to come back often and study frequently. We'll see you in the next lecture. Inventory valuation can make or break a company. It is absolutely essential that the valuation method you choose aligns with the needs of your specific business and the industry it serves. In this video, we will introduce one valuation type known as average cost valuation, and sometimes referred to as weighted average cost method. The average cost method is an inventory valuation method used in accounting to calculate the value of inventory. Put very simply, it is the cost of all inventory items summed and averaged. The figure is calculated by dividing the total cost of goods by the total number of goods over a specific accounting cycle. While you should speak with a professional accountant or a CPA to decide the best method of inventory valuation, the average cost method is easy to calculate and has many benefits. One benefit is that the average cost method assigns a value to both the cost of goods sold and the cost of goods still available over a defined period. The period is usually defined as monthly, quarterly, or yearly. The average cost method is one of the most straightforward ways to determine cost of goods sold over a specific period. Let's look at an example and understand how the average cost method works. While this may not be critical to inventory management, it will help you understand how inventory is valued when using an average cost method. On the screen, you will see a company that sells goods. This sales ledger shows our data for the first quarter of the year. As you can see, we first add up the total number of items, and then we add up the total cost of all the items. Next, you would divide the total costs by the total number of items, and this would give you the weighted average cost per item. Now let's imagine that this same company sells 50 units during the same accounting period. You would then calculate the cost of goods sold by multiplying the number of units sold by the average cost. Likewise, you could calculate the cost of goods still available by multiplying the number of items remaining by the average cost per item. The main benefit of the average cost method is its simplicity, especially for companies that deal with large volumes of very similar items. On the downside, results can vary greatly from actual costs if your inventory costs are not stable. And that's it, the average cost method of inventory valuation. Remember, you should always consult an attorney, professional accountant, or a reputable CPA before selecting your valuation method. We'll see you in the next lecture. Inventory valuation can make or break a company. It is absolutely essential that the valuation method you choose aligns with the needs of your specific business and the industry it serves. In this video, we will introduce one valuation type known as first in, first out valuation method, or FIFO for short. Let's jump in. First in, first out is a method used in accounting for the valuation of inventory. While you may think of the movement of physical inventory when you hear the phrase first in, first out, this is not always true in terms of inventory valuation at an aggregate accounting level. In fact, when looking at valuation using FIFO method, one must assume that the oldest inventory is used first. What does this mean exactly? Well, assets that are produced or acquired first are sold, used, or disposed of first. With that being said, there is no direct relationship between the movement of physical assets and the valuation other than the fact that accounting assumes the oldest is used first. When looking at FIFO from a tax perspective, the method assumes that inventory with the oldest costs are shown on an income statement under cost of goods sold first. Any other inventory that is left over is paired with the most recent purchase price or production cost. So, why would an organization use FIFO? Remember, always speak with your accountant or CPA before deciding on a valuation method. In most organizations, as inventory progresses to later stages of transformation and as finished goods are removed from inventory and sold, the costs associated with the item should be acknowledged as an expense. However, in the case of FIFO, it is assumed that the cost of the oldest inventory will be recognized first. This lowers the total value of your inventory. With this in mind, there are many advantages and disadvantages of the FIFO method. One advantage is that when inflation occurs or prices are rising, the FIFO method reduces the impact of inflation and understates the value of your inventory. Of course, this also means that if prices are falling or deflation is occurring, FIFO overstates the value of your inventory. This occurs because the cost of the oldest items in your inventory. For example, during inflation, the cost of purchasing newer inventory will be higher than the cost of older inventory. Another benefit is that FIFO is probably the most used form of valuation across the global environment. One of the last benefits of first in, first out valuation is that it is a good method for reducing obsolescence of inventory because the oldest is used first. Now let's turn our attention to the disadvantages of FIFO. To do this, we will quote from an article on Investopedia entitled, "What are the Disadvantages of FIFO Accounting Method?" You can find a link in the article below. In the article, the author, Greg DiPersio, cites two key disadvantages. The first, according to the article, is that FIFO tends to overstate gross margin, particularly during periods of high inflation, which creates misleading financial statements. Costs seem lower than they actually are, and gains seem higher than they actually are. The second disadvantage, according to the article, is that because of these high profits, a company may incur substantially higher income taxes. Let's look at an example of FIFO before we go. Let's say we purchase 100 items for $5 each, and 100 more items are purchased next for $10 each. We now have 200 items with a total value of $1,500 in inventory. Now let's say we sell 20 items for $20 each. FIFO would assign the cost of the first 20 items resold at $5. Because we are using FIFO, the cost of the first 20 items is $5 each. This means our cost of goods sold is $100, and we have a remaining value of $1,400 in inventory. After 100 items are sold, the new cost of the item would become $10 regardless of any additional inventory purchases that are made. And that's it, FIFO. Now, let's make our minds think for a second with a little challenge. If we purchase 20 items at $5 each in month 1, then in month 2 we purchase 20 items at $7 each, and finally in month 3 we purchase 20 more items at $10 each, and we sell 15 items, what would the cost be under the FIFO method and why? We look forward to hearing your answers, and we'll see you in the next lecture. Inventory valuation can make or break a company. It is absolutely essential that the valuation method you choose aligns with the needs of your specific business and the industry it serves. In this video, we will introduce one valuation type known as last in, first out valuation method, or LIFO for short. Let's jump in. LIFO is a method used for cost flow assumption purposes in the cost of goods sold calculation. The LIFO method of inventory valuation assumes the cost of most recent products or last in products of a company's inventory have been sold first. The costs paid for those recent products are the ones used in the calculation. In other words, LIFO is the opposite of FIFO. Much like FIFO, there is not necessarily a relationship with the actual physical movement of inventory and the accounting assumption. So, why would a company want to use LIFO? Remember, always speak with your accountant or CPA before deciding on a valuation method. They will give you the best advice for your specific needs. Sometimes the cost to produce or purchase goods increases. When these periods of inflation occur, LIFO may be a good option. While LIFO may make your products decrease on paper, this also means that you will not pay as much in taxes. With that being said, If the inflationary period is going to be a long one, it may be beneficial to reduce profits and pay less in taxes. Remember, we are not recommending what valuation method you should use. This should be done by a licensed accountant, CPA, or accounting attorney if they are qualified. Now, let's look at an example of LIFO to help us understand a little more about this method of valuation. Let's say we purchase 100 items for $5 each, and 100 more items are purchased next for $10 each. We now have 200 items with a total value of $1,500 in inventory. Now let's say we sell 20 items for $20 each. LIFO would assign the cost of the last 20 items resold at $10 each. Because we are using LIFO, the cost of the first 20 items is $10 each. And this means our cost of goods sold is $200 and we have a remaining value of $1,300 in inventory. After 100 items total were sold, the new cost of the item would become $5 only if no new items were purchased. One thing to note about LIFO is that it is only permitted in the United States under rules that are set by GAAP, or Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. And that's it, LIFO. Now let's make our minds think for a second with a little challenge. If we purchase 20 items at $15 each in month 1, then in month 2 we purchase 20 more items at $20 each, and finally in month 3 we purchase 20 more items at $25 each, and we sell 15 items. What would the cost be under the LIFO method and why? We look forward to hearing your answers, and we'll see you in the next lecture. Inventory valuation can make or break a company. It is absolutely essential that the valuation method you choose aligns with the needs of your specific business and the industry it serves. In this video, we will introduce one valuation type known as the specific identification method. Let's now answer the question, what is the specific identification method? The specific identification inventory valuation method is used to track each and every item in your inventory individually. This includes the time it enters the inventory until the time it leaves it. Let's not get confused here. Specific identification is different from LIFO and FIFO. LIFO and FIFO groups pieces of inventory together based on when they were purchased and how much they cost, while specific identification identifies and tracks every piece of inventory individually. The specific inventory method tags or marks each item with its purchase cost and any additional costs that are incurred in the transformation process until it is sold. So, what are some different reasons that a company might choose to use this method of valuation? Before we do that, we need to remind you to always speak with a CPA, professional accountant, or an accounting attorney. While we can share information on this method of valuation, they can give you the specifics that will fit your needs. Okay, the first reason a company may choose to use specific identification is because of the cost of the item. For example, you would not want to identify and track every move of low-profit inventory. However, you may want to consider this method for larger and more expensive items. While many types of valuation are not directly linked to the physical movement or location of the inventory, specific identification is to a certain extent. For example, Items that have different features may need to be identified in a specific way so that costs can be tracked and they can be pulled from inventory easily. The final reason we will share comes from Investopedia, and you can find the link in the description below. Quoting from the article, occasionally, it is used to identify specific securities. This method of identification allows investors to reduce or offset capital gains by picking a specific lot of securities to be used as the basis for a sale. One last thing to note about the specific identification is that this form of inventory valuation takes much more work to keep information organized and trackable. Now, let's look at an example before we go. Let's say you own a manufacturing plant. At your plant, you do assembly as well. Many of the parts look identical but require different methods of processing, which changes the cost. As such, each of your parts is tracked individually from the time they enter the lot until they are sold. In this scenario, the benefits are clear. The owner of the plant gets far more information about the unique parts and the different accessories and features that are most popular with his customers. As you can see, specific identification can be valuable in certain situations. Keep in mind, this is only an introduction to this method of valuation to better help you understand how it applies in inventory management. With that being said, we won't dig into specifics of this specific identification method just yet. But we would like to know, do you use specific identification? If so, what tips and tricks do you use to track items? Remember, answering these questions opens up discussion and helps build a community where you can interact with each other and find more solutions that ignite your power. See you in the next lecture. Let's begin by answering the question, what is standard costs or costing? Standard costs are actually estimates of the actual costs in a company's production process. These estimates are used because knowing the exact costs would be impossible until the process is performed. One of the benefits of using standard costs is so the company can quote, estimate, and budget more efficiently. Of course, using standard costs allows a company to see variance in the estimates once the actual data has been collected. As was mentioned already, no company can predict all the variables that will occur during manufacturing, so they use standard costs. Typically, as the actual costs are collected, a company should go back and check the estimates by entering the appropriate actual costs. If at the end of the accounting period the standard costs are higher than the actual expenses, then the company has a favorable variance. On the other hand, if the company's actual costs were higher, then the company would have an unfavorable variance. If the company's variance was unfavorable, the company must then analyze the data and find where in the manufacturing process the actual cost difference lies. Some areas they may analyze are labor, cost variances, material cost variances, and overhead cost variances. By doing this, it will reduce the variance in your estimates and help keep them more accurate. You may also hear standard costs referred to as preset costs, preset pricing, expected costs, predetermined costs, or preset costing. Now, you may be wondering, what are the advantages and disadvantages of standard costing? As a reminder, you should speak with a CPA, professional accountant, or accounting attorney before deciding on different methods of valuation. With that being said, there are many advantages of standard costing. The first being that it allows an organization to budget much better than without it. Next, standard costing plays a vital role in quoting items and assigning a value to the inventory that you have. Another benefit is that it makes it much easier and faster for an organization to produce financial records, and finally, it gives businesses a way to benchmark one another. With that in mind, every advantage has a disadvantage too. Some of the disadvantages of standard costing are: standard costing needs to be updated regularly. Without this, the estimates themselves will not assume any changes, and this can result in very unfavorable results. This leads us to another disadvantage, which is that standard costing really does not look enough on the favorable variances, but tends to be quite critical of unfavorable ones. Last but not least, standard costs require a lot of work to hone in and get your estimates accurate. With that being said, once they are accurate, they can be a powerful tool for a company. By now you may be wondering, how are standard costs calculated? Standard costs are calculated with 3 different pieces of data: direct labor, direct materials, and manufacturing or variable overhead. When these 3 elements are added together, you get a standard cost. One thing to note is that many people refer to manufacturing overhead or variable overhead as simply overhead. And that's it, standard costing. Now remember, this is only an introduction to standard costing, and we will revisit this topic later on. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Hi there, and welcome back. In this video, we will create a template so that you can easily calculate standard costs. If you haven't seen our other video on standard costing, be sure to check the description for a link to that video. Now, before we get started, we will be using Google Sheets to find and build our template and a sum formula. If you're not familiar with Google Sheets, you can visit another link in the description to learn more about this powerful tool. Okay, let's get started. Now, we've already got our sheet set up to number using a row formula, and we've frozen the top row to keep things organized when we are scrolling. As we learned in previous videos, there are 3 elements of standard costing: direct labor, direct materials, and manufacturing or variable overhead. With that in mind, we need to create some labels that contain the 3 elements of standard costs. Our first label will be direct labor, next, direct materials, and finally, manufacturing or variable overhead. The final label we will add is the label we will use for standard costs. Now, before we begin our standard cost formula, you may want to clean up your sheet a bit and organize it the way that you like. You may be using it a lot after this. Now, we're ready to start. As we learned in our previous standard cost video, we calculate standard costs by adding direct labor, direct materials, and variable or manufacturing overhead together. To do this, we will use a sum formula. Let's get started with an equal sign to begin our formula. Then we will type in SUM with an open bracket and highlight our cells containing direct labor, materials, and overhead. Then we'll close our bracket and you will see that a 0 pops up. Next, we will grab our completed formula, copy it, and highlight the entire column where standard costing is and paste the formula all the way down. Then replace your label on the top only And now you have a simple template that you can input your direct labor, direct materials, and variable or manufacturing overhead in, and automatically calculate your standard costs. Remember, Google Sheets can be reformatted as currency, time, or just basic numbers, and many other ways too. So, if you want to reformat it, please feel free to. Also, this template is available by clicking on the link in the description, so you can build it if you want or save a little bit of time and visit our website. We hope you enjoy this easy standard costing template using a sum formula, and we'll see you in the next video. Though not a valuation method, transfer pricing is a technique that organizations use to assist in aggregate inventory management, especially when looking at and adjusting margins. Formally defined, transfer pricing is a practice used in accounting to transfer the cost of goods or services from one area of a business to another. This transfer could be different divisions, different segments, or even interplant transfers. While transfer pricing does not change the value of inventory, it can yield significant tax savings under commonly controlled companies. It should be noted that transfer pricing has very strict guidelines, and you should always consult a licensed accountant, CPA, or accounting attorney before engaging in transfer pricing. Put very simply, transfer pricing gives an organization the ability to transfer inventory between subsidiaries of a commonly controlled company or companies that are part of the same enterprise. This can lead to significant tax savings for corporations. While we won't dig into this topic, it is important for you to have a basic understanding of how this method works. Transfer pricing is a practice used in accounting that allows a company to price transactions internally within businesses and between subsidiaries. These different subsidiaries or divisions must be owned by the same larger controlling company. A transfer price is used to determine the cost to charge another division, subsidiary, or holding company for goods or services rendered. As you might have guessed, this tactic is mostly used to adjust profit margins, cost of goods sold, or assets that are still on hand. By doing this, a company can reduce profits or increase profits based on their specific needs. Typically, transfer prices are reflective of the going market for that good or service. Transfer pricing can also be used with intellectual property, and that's it. Transfer pricing. Thanks for watching this quick introduction to transfer pricing, and we'll see you in the next video. In a perfect world, we all would know what is happening with every piece of our inventory at every moment. We would have all the data we need stored in our head, and everything would be 100% accurate. But let's face it, this isn't a perfect world, and nobody could store that much data. When it comes to inventory management, key performance indicators are very important, and there is a long list of them. Everything from inventory turnover rate, days on hand, stock to sales ratio, sell-through rates, back order rates, rate of return, put away time, perfect order rate, and thousands more. Could you imagine having all that information? It would be very difficult to track, understand, and act on opportunities. Inventory metrics need to be simple. With that being said, over the next few videos, we will look at 4 of the most important measures you can monitor at an aggregate level to set inventory goals, manage inventory, and make adjustments when needed. Those 4 measures are inventory turnover, days of supply, fill rate, and cash-to-cash cycle. These 4 key performance indicators are used by some of the largest companies, including USPS, Walmart, and Amazon. With that in mind, we would like to ask each of you, what measurements do you track your inventory with? Share your thoughts in the community, comments, or upcoming assignments, and remember to come back often. We'll see you in the next lecture. Managing inventory would be impossible without a means to track how much inventory is on hand and if it is an appropriate amount of inventory. With this being said, the days of supply metric is a useful metric that can show an organization how many days their existing inventory will last before it reaches 0 or drops into their safety stocks. The days of supply are often evaluated or defined by periods. For example, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, or even periodically. You will need to decide what period of evaluation will work best for you. From a planning perspective, this can be beneficial on many different levels. First, it helps a planner gauge when they will run out of inventory as well as plan for replenishment of those items if necessary. From a procurement perspective, the days of supply metric can help determine how many items to order, when to order, and how frequently the purchaser should order. One of the many benefits of the days of supply metric outside of knowing when you will run out of inventory is that it decreases ordering costs because planner and procurement officers are better able to gauge what they need to order. This will also have a positive effect on receiving materials and help you avoid lost sales. Now that we know what days of supply is, let's look at this metric and how it is calculated. Days of supply is calculated by dividing your inventory on hand by the average daily usage. For example, if your organization has 1,000 units on hand and you are using, on average, 14 per day, you would have 71 days of supply left in inventory. And that's it, days of supply. Now, in keeping with our traditions, let's make our minds think a little. Let's say we have 1,740 units of inventory on hand, and our company uses about 24 units a day. What would our days of supply be? We look forward to seeing your answers in the comments section or the upcoming assignment section, and we look forward to seeing you back here on Lean Strategies International LLC, where you can find solutions that ignite your power today. Inventory turnover is an essential metric that all organizations need to track. Inventory turnover can reveal everything from how your pricing is, how long a product is sitting, and even how long your money is tied up. With that said, let's focus on what inventory turnover actually is. Formally defined, inventory turnover is the number of times your inventory cycles or turns over in a year, or a defined period of time. Inventory turnover can help an organization understand how efficiently their inventory is supporting sales. The inventory turnover number implies how often inventory was bought and sold throughout a defined period. Put another way, inventory turnover is an indicator of how well a business is using their inventory. For example, how many dollars of sales from a cost perspective are being supported by each dollar of inventory. Low inventory turnover numbers often hint at overstocking, obsolescence, or unstable processes. A high inventory turnover can also be dangerous if it is depleting reserves too quickly, but generally points towards strong sales and effective inventory management for an organization. Now that we know what inventory turnover is, let's break down the ratio and understand what it means. Put very simply, the ratio tells us the number of times the inventory is sold and replenished or turned over in a defined period of time. With this in mind, many organizations also use the ratio to help them understand how long it will take to sell the inventory they have on hand. The inventory ratio divides two numbers, which are cost of goods sold and average inventory. The output of this formula tells an organization how many times inventory turns over in a specific period of time. As you might have guessed, a high inventory turnover ratio means that you cycle inventory much more often, and as mentioned before, is good evidence of strong sales and effective inventory management. It is important to note that engineer-to-order companies and make-to-order companies may have lower inventory turnover ratios, as the products are much more customizable and not usually sold in large volumes. Nonetheless, if an organization has a low turnover ratio, inventory analysis is needed to find the cause. Now, let's look over briefly at how the turnover ratio works. As mentioned earlier, turnover is calculated by dividing the cost of goods sold by the average inventory. Average inventory is used to smooth out the peaks and valleys of inventory and give you a more stable, consistent metric to work with. This also helps to smooth out seasonal fluctuations, such as holidays or even major events. With this new piece of knowledge, let's walk through the steps of calculating inventory turnover. As we've mentioned, inventory turnover is calculated by dividing the cost of goods sold by the average amount of inventory. First, we start by getting our average inventory. The most common way to do this is by adding your beginning inventory and your ending inventory for a defined period and dividing that by 2. Now that we have our average inventory, we need to gather our total cost of goods sold for a period. This can generally be found on an income statement, but you may need to do some calculations to find it. Once you have your cost of goods sold, we are ready to calculate our inventory turnover. To do this, we divide the cost of goods sold by the average inventory amount. Let's look at an example. Let's say we have a company called K&K Manufacturing. K&K has posted a cost of goods sold of $1,500 and an average inventory amount of $500 on hand for the fourth quarter. We would then divide $1,500 by $500, which gives K&K an inventory turnover ratio of 3. In the second example, we'll use the same company, but this time compute the average inventory period, or how long it will take to sell the inventory currently on hand using inventory turnover. We already know the inventory turnover ratio is 3. To calculate how many days it will take to sell the inventory on hand, we simply divide 365 days in the year by 3. which equals 121.67 days, or 122 days if we round our answer. We now know how long it will take to sell the inventory. And that's it. Inventory turnover. Now, let's challenge ourselves a bit. Let's say K&K posts data for the next quarter. This quarter, they have an average of $2,000 and a cost of goods sold of $1,100. What is their inventory turnover? And what does this number indicate or reveal to you about how their inventory has changed? We look forward to hearing your answers, and we'll see you in the next video. Have you ever wondered, how many customer orders can I fill without running out of inventory? If you have, then fill rate is the metric for you. Fill rate is another very important inventory metric that will help you understand questions like this and many more. So, what is the fill rate? Well, formally defined, a fill rate is the percentage of customer orders that a company can ship or fill immediately from the inventory you have on hand without placing back orders, running out of stock, or missing sales. Okay, such a valuable measurement must be quite complex to calculate, right? Actually, another powerful aspect of the fill rate is its simplicity to calculate. The fill rate can be generated at any time to help an organization understand what they can fill. The formula is simple as well. Fill rate is calculated by dividing the number of products you provided or filled by the total number of products ordered. So, what does the output of this formula actually tell us? Well, to start, the fill rate is interpreted as a percentage, or orders filled from the total number of orders. For example, if we fulfilled 10 orders out of 20, that would mean our fill rate is 50%, which is not very good at all. The low fill rate may indicate that you don't have enough stock on hand or that your inventory is not being replenished fast enough. It may also be an indicator of many other inventory issues, like poor organization in the warehouse. Nonetheless, if your fill rate is 80% or less, you need to look closer at your inventory and find out what is causing the low fill rate. Let's look at an example. Assuming we have only one order and one customer we are filling for, let's imagine that K&K Manufacturing has an order to fill 50 bottles of a powerful prescription medication. K&K is only able to ship 40 bottles of the medication. To get K&K's fill rate, we divide 40 bottles shipped by the complete order of 50 bottles. K&K's fill rate is 80%. Now let's turn our attention to why an organization would want to track their fill rate. Without some understanding of how well you are meeting customer demand, you are only guessing. And, as we all know, how well you meet customer demand is critical in inventory management and the overall customer experience. Fill rate can give you insight into how well you are doing and help you find opportunities if changes are needed. Another reason that many companies opt to track fill rate is to manage their orders. For example, if you are not able to fill an order in its entirety, you can inform your customer and find solutions to your problem before the customer becomes frustrated. One way you may do this is by offering alternatives to a product if you cannot fill the entire order, or by shipping partials. Fill rate can also help you manage and improve your inventory fulfillment processes. For example, if your fill rate has a dropping trend or is always low, you may consider searching for alternative suppliers or revisiting how your reorder strategy is working. If the item is an in-house item, you may consider looking at the value stream and removing waste or issues. This will help you ensure you're maintaining optimal inventory levels. And that's it, fill rate. Now, before we go, let's see if you can answer this question in the comments section or the upcoming assignments section. Let's say that K&K receives an order for 120 bottles of prescription medication, and they are only able to fill 94 bottles of the order. What is their fill rate, and what actions might you take if this was your fill rate? Well, thanks for watching, friends. We look forward to seeing you back here again on Lean Strategies International, where you can find solutions that ignite your power today. In this video, we will learn how to set up a very simple template to calculate your fill rate inside of Google Sheets. Before we get started, we will be using Google Sheets to build your template and a formula that will make calculating the fill rate easy. If you're not familiar with Google Sheets, you can visit another link in the description to learn more about this powerful tool. Also, there is one more assumption we will have, and that is that all items are on one order and with one customer. The formula can get quite a bit complex when you mix and match multiple orders. Okay, let's get started. Now, we've already set up our sheet to number using a row formula, and we've frozen the top row to keep things organized when we are scrolling. As we learned in previous videos, there are two elements of fill rate: fulfilled items on the order and total number of items on the order. With that in mind, we need to create some labels that contain the two elements of fill rate. Our first label will be fulfilled items. Next, we need a label that says total number of items on the order, and finally, a label that says fill rate. Now, before we begin our fill rate formula, you may want to clean up your sheet a little bit and organize it the way that you like. You may be using it a lot. Now, we're ready to get started. As we learned in our previous videos, fill rate is calculated by dividing fulfilled items on the order by total number of items on the order. To do this, we will use the if-error formula. Let's begin. First, we will enter our equal sign to start our formula. Then we will type if error with an open bracket. Now we will select cell B2 with a divide sign or /, and then select cell C2. Next, we want to enter a comma. This will move us to our first argument. In our case, if B2 divided by C2 is an error or cannot be calculated, we would like our cell to show up blank. To do this, we will enter 2 apostrophes in our argument, and then close our formula. Now, if we enter only one number, or by chance there is an error, the cell will remain blank. Next, we will grab our completed formula, copy it, and highlight the entire column where fill rate is, and paste the formula all the way down. Then replace your label in the top cell only. Finally, we want to format our fill rate so that it returns a percentage without having to multiply the answer by 100. To do this, we will select our entire fill rate column and click here. Then we will select %. Now, when the fill rate is calculated, our sheet will return a %. For example, 70% fill rate or 100% fill rate. Okay, let's try it out. Let's say we filled 14 items in a 20-item order. Our sheet now automatically calculates our 70% fill rate. And that's it. A simple fill rate template that you can use daily if need be. Also, this template is available by clicking on the link in the description, so you can build it if you want or save a little time and visit our website. We hope you enjoyed this easy fill rate template using our if-error formula, and we'll see you in the next video. Wouldn't it be nice if you had a metric that could track the time between when a business pays its suppliers and when the business receives payment from its customers? The cash conversion cycle, also known as the cash-to-cash cycle time, does just that. In this lecture, you will learn the foundational elements of the cash-to-cash cycle time. Let's get started. Cash-to-cash cycle time looks at the amount of time, usually days, of working capital a business has tied up in managing its inventory or supply chain. Like many metrics, the more efficient the cash-to-cash cycle time is, the fewer days an organization's cash is unavailable for use. A cash-to-cash cycle time of 1 month or less would be considered a good time. On the other hand, a cash-to-cash cycle time of 2 to 3 months would show that an organization's cash is tied up and not available for use for what many industries consider to be a dangerous amount of time. Please note that the cash-to-cash cycle time can vary quite a bit between industries. With this in mind, it should be every organization's objective to reduce their cash-to-cash cycle time. How do you do this? One of the primary ways that a company can reduce the amount of time that cash is tied up is to optimize the inventory they have on hand. If cash is not tied up in inventory, it is available for use. This is why continuous improvement strategies like Lean are a very effective way to improve cash-to-cash cycle time. Be aware that improving your overall inventory strategy will require alignment of all parties, including supply chain partners, as well as finding and removing waste and creating a more streamlined organization. Improving order-to-cash processes will also reduce your cash-to-cash cycle time. As invoice processing and receipt of customer payments improves, the amount of time that an organization's capital is tied up will improve as well. 3 possible areas a company can look to improve their cash-to-cash cycle time are: first, invoicing processes can be mapped out and waste can be eliminated to create a more streamlined process flow. Second, many organizations can also reduce or eliminate wasteful activities that do not transform information or materials in any way. And finally, organizations may also analyze antiquated systems and processes and choose to revise inefficient processes that increase the likelihood of billing errors and causing information or material defects. You may be wondering, how do you calculate this cash conversion cycle? The cash conversion cycle is calculated by adding days inventory outstanding and days sales outstanding, and then subtracting days payable outstanding. Let's look at an example. It takes K&K Manufacturing an average of 60 days to sell its inventory. Once they have sold their product, it then takes them about 30 days to collect payment from customers. In general, K&K pays its suppliers in 75 days. With this data, we can calculate our cash-to-cash cycle time. First, we add 60 days inventory outstanding and 30 days sales outstanding. Then we subtract 75 days payables outstanding, and we get a cash-to-cash cycle time of 15 days. Now, you may be wondering, how do I calculate days inventory outstanding, days sales outstanding, and days payable outstanding? Well, in the next few lectures, we will share with you about these three elements of the cash-to-cash cycle time. Now, before we go, let's challenge our minds by answering the following question. Let's say K&K Manufacturing takes an average of 32 days to sell its inventory. Once they have sold their product, it then takes them about 90 days to collect payment from customers, and in general, K&K pays its suppliers in about 60 days. What is K&K's cash-to-cash cycle time, and what observations can you make from this metric? Thanks again for watching, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you right back here on Lean Strategies International LLC, where you can find solutions that ignite your power. Days Inventory Outstanding, or DIO, as it is often referred to, is a ratio that measures the average number of days that a company holds inventory before they transform that inventory into sales. The lower the figure, the better. You may be wondering, why? Well, lower DIO tells us that this inventory will tie up our cash for less time and that our risk of obsolete inventory is much less, and that is good. Days Inventory Outstanding is also known as Days Sales of Inventory and Days in Inventory. Days Inventory Outstanding is one component of the cash conversion cycle, or cash-to-cash cycle time, which you can learn more about by clicking on a link in the description. The cash conversion cycle is calculated using three metrics. They are Days Inventory Outstanding, Days Payable Outstanding, and Days Sales Outstanding. Why is this important? Well, it tells us that the cash-to-cash cycle time can be improved by reducing DIO, reducing DSO, or increasing DPO. So, how do we calculate Days Inventory Outstanding? Days Inventory Outstanding is usually calculated as shown in the picture here. DIO equals average inventory divided by cost of goods sold times the number of days in the period you are calculating. For example, if a company has $30,000 in inventory on average during a 1-year period, and their cost of goods sold is $143,000, we would calculate DIO by first dividing the average inventory of $30,000 by the cost of goods sold of $143,000, and then multiplying that by the number of days in the period. For example, if our period was a year, we would multiply our answer by 365 days. This would equal a DIO of 76.57 days. Let's now answer the question, what does a high or low Days Inventory Outstanding mean? When a company has a low DIO, it typically means they are converting inventory into sales rapidly. This is a good thing. Another way to interpret low DIO is that there is less chance that inventory will become obsolete. So what does a high DIO signal? In general, a lower DIO is better than a higher one. High DIO generally indicates that a company is not converting inventory into sales fast enough. This could also reveal inventory management issues such as overstocking. If DIO is high, the company's cash is also tied up in inventory for a longer period of time, which also means that the company cannot use its money for other purposes. So, how do you improve your high DIO? There are two basic ways that a company can improve days inventory outstanding. The first is to speed up the conversion of inventory into sales, and the second is to reduce the amount of inventory that you are holding. This may involve using techniques like the just-in-time system or implementing continuous improvement strategies like Lean, which generally have a positive effect on inventory management. In addition to these strategies, many organizations will be deployed, honed in on sales techniques like various marketing strategies and using different methods that influence customer sales. And that's it. Days inventory outstanding. Well, thanks for watching, friends, and remember to keep coming back and studying your videos where you can find solutions that ignite your power today. Days payable outstanding is a financial ratio used in accounting and finance departments that measures how many days, usually on average, it takes a company to provide payment to its suppliers. The higher a company's DPO, the longer it takes to pay its bills. Days payable outstanding is calculated using the formula shown here. To calculate DPO, you would multiply accounts payable by the number of days in your period and then divide your answer by the cost of goods sold. Let's look at an example. Let's say K&K Manufacturing has an average accounts payable of $200,000 over a 365-day period, and their cost of sales is $750,000. To calculate the DPO, we would first multiply $200,000 by the number of days in our period, which is 365. We would then divide our answer by our cost of sales, which was $750,000, and that would give us a DPO of 97.33 days. It should be noted that days payable outstanding is the opposite of days sales outstanding and is also a component of the cash-to-cash cycle time. Why is this important? It tells us that companies can optimize or reduce their cash-to-cash cycle time by increasing DPO or by reducing DSO or DIO. So, what does it mean when a company's DPO is high or low? A high DPO means the company is taking a longer time to pay its suppliers. Of course, if a company takes longer to pay its suppliers, they are better able to invest cash for a longer period of time. However, this may not be beneficial for a buyer-supplier relationship. For example, a company with a high DPO may be missing out on early payment discounts offered by their suppliers. It's important to remember that DPO can vary quite a bit between industries and practices. As such, there is no standard number that represents a good or bad DPO. Sometimes, when a company's DPO is low, it could be an indication that the company is not getting the best credit terms from suppliers or is not taking full advantage of the credit terms that may be available to them. With that being said, this could be an opportunity to extend DPO and improve the company's cash-to-cash cycle time. A low DPO, on the other hand, is not necessarily bad, as it may indicate that the company is paying suppliers early and taking advantage of early payment discounts. And that's it. Days payable outstanding. Well, thanks for watching this video on days payable outstanding, and we look forward to having you back here for more great content right here on Lean Strategies International LLC, where you can find solutions that ignite your power. Days Sales Outstanding, or DSO as it is often called, is a ratio that measures the average number of days a company takes to collect its accounts receivable. When a company's DSO is short, it tells us that the company is faster at collecting payments from customers. This also means you are able to use the cash from sales sooner. When combined with days payable outstanding and days inventory outstanding, DSO is a component of the cash conversion cycle. So, how do we calculate DSO? DSO is calculated with the formula shown here. DSO equals accounts receivable multiplied by the number of days in the period divided by the total credit sales. For example, if a company has credit sales of $1.5 million over the course of a year and an accounts receivable balance of $150,000, we would calculate the DSO by first multiplying our accounts receivable of $150,000 by the number of days in our period, which in this case is 1 year or 365 days. Next, we divide this answer by the total sales due to be paid on a future date, which are known as credit sales. In our case, we divide $54,750,000 by $1,500,000. This would give us a DSO of 36.5 days. So, what exactly does 36.5 days tell us? To start, you should know that a high DSO can be dangerous. It indicates a company is selling lots of products on credit and is taking longer than normal time to collect payments for the sales from customers. This will eventually result in cash flow difficulties. On the other hand, a low DSO tells us that the company is collecting payment from its customers quite rapidly. And, as we all know, getting paid quickly is important. Be aware that DSO can vary quite a bit in different industries. With this in mind, we should consider the question, how can we improve DSO? DSO is unique in the sense that you have so much information that can be improved. With that said, mapping your receivable or collection process out and removing waste can improve both the information side of the value stream and the material side of the value stream. Another way to improve your DSO is by automating parts of the collection process. For example, electronic invoicing is much quicker than mailing and faxing. Also, many systems will now automatically guide quotes to POs and POs right into invoices. This makes the information side of the process much more efficient. Another very common way that companies can improve DSO is by giving your customers incentives to pay early. For example, a 210 net 30 means that the buyer receives a 2% discount if they pay the invoice within 10 days instead of within 30 days. And that's it. Days Sales Outstanding. Well, thank you for watching this video on Days Sales Outstanding, and we look forward to having you back for more great content right here on Lean Strategies International LLC, where you can find solutions that ignite your power. Inventory is one of the largest assets that a company will have. It accounts for much of a balance sheet and, equally as important, contributes to much of the work in an organization. But is it the most important resource? Some would argue no. People are a very important resource in every organization and equally, if not more important, than the inventory you hold. With this in mind, How can an organization get these two very important assets and resources to work together for the better of a company? To put it bluntly, training. Having a strong, knowledgeable, and skilled staff can really impact an organization for the better. Inventory management training will give employees new skills, the latest ideas, and best practices in both inventory control and management. When you train employees, especially in inventory management, you ensure that they are ready to help a company succeed and that the goals and objectives of an organization are ready to be met. When a company invests in inventory training, you better equip people to manage inventory in an effective way. They have the tools they need. Training and regular kata helps people improve their knowledge, know-how, and skill set. Ultimately, this enhances an organization's operational efficiency and reduces wastes that are associated with inventory. Another benefit of successful inventory training is that when you train one person, you are in a way influencing others. If training goes well for someone, they are more likely to share information with others, and that can act as a form of yokoten. So, what are the benefits of effective inventory control? Effective inventory control and management is at the center of both operational and supply chain excellence. The benefits of educating people with regards to inventory will help you manage inventories effectively in terms of stock levels, operational efficiencies, and it will have a positive impact on your customer service levels. In addition to this, properly trained employees are better able to prevent defects and avoid costly mistakes. Employees who have sufficient training understand the details of their job and require less supervision. This ultimately allows a company to put more time and effort into other areas like continuous improvement. Another very beneficial aspect of employee training is that it has been shown to improve an employee's satisfaction and boost their morale. Employees who are part of training feel valued and appreciated. For the business, this is a critical part of sustainability planning. Trained employees are more prepared to take on new responsibilities. Keep in mind that training is a very strategic activity that takes a great deal of effort and thought. It is essential that inventory training is part of an organization's business strategy. While we must acknowledge that no inventory system will be perfect, the result of effective training will be obvious. You will see waste eliminated, employees better able to handle issues, improved inventory turnover, reduced operational costs, and ultimately, greater profitability. Well, thanks for watching this video on inventory training. Now, before we go, let's see if you can answer this question in the comment section or upcoming assignment section. Have you been part of inventory training? If so, what type of training did you take or receive? Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you back here on Lean Strategies International LLC, where you can find solutions that ignite your power. When it comes to deciding just how much inventory you will carry, there are only two real options. Either you hold extra inventory, or you carry the bare minimum. In other words, the general consensus in every company is that you will never have the perfect amount of inventory. So, how do you decide how much inventory you have on hand and the trade-offs that will occur as you build inventory or draw it down? From an organizational perspective, companies need to ensure that they have a healthy return on their investments, flow and efficiency within operations, and customers that are happy. With this in mind, it is a very strategic decision that management must decide on when it comes to how much inventory you will hold. Let's look over a few considerations that you should keep in mind when you're trying to balance conflicting points of view. Keeping customers happy is a very important consideration. Companies should provide the right product or service at the right time and in the right amount to their customers. Service levels help organizations decide what types of standards you will set. But you must keep in mind that from a traditional perspective, having inventory on hand will increase customer satisfaction and revenue, but it will also tie up resources from a financial perspective. In keeping customers happy, you must also keep in mind that uncertainties are certain to come up. For example, machines may experience downtime, supply chains may run slow, and other bottlenecks may pop up. Inventory can help mitigate these uncertainties, but you must be aware that focusing on customer service tends to increase inventory in order to decrease delivery lead times and the inevitable stockouts. While this method of improving customer service may improve revenue, from a financial perspective, it will also increase manufacturing costs. Methods like the just-in-time system can oftentimes balance conflicting trade-offs. Having a healthy return on your investments is crucial. If you're not making money, you can't stay in business. With that in mind, it is very important that inventory turnover is high and the amount of inventory you hold is efficient and at the lowest possible amount. In other words, an organization must convert inventory into sales quickly and prevent cash from being tied up with excessive assets being held on hand. While this goal is a good one, it also gives birth to the possibility that customer service may suffer and flow and efficiency may slow down. Once again, any organization that wants to convert inventory into sales fast needs to hone in on the appropriate marketing and sales strategies. And if they are trying to lower or hold less inventory, lean and just-in-time are a must. Finally, a company must have flow and efficiency within operations. Operations are most efficient when waste has been removed and flow can occur. In many cases, this means reducing changeover times, reducing wait times, and eliminating defects. Many organizations don't see the power of removing waste and opt for long production runs to keep efficiency high. And while efficiency will remain high with long production runs, it also prevents a company from building to demand. As such, production efficiency through longer runs may support operations interests and finances interests in lowering costs, but longer runs could result in stockouts of certain items and decreased customer service. With these three examples in mind, be sure that you are aware of the different trade-offs that may occur when building inventory or drawing it down. Remember, flow is essential, and every change you make will likely have some impact on some other area of the company. We'll see you soon. Inventory is one of the main focuses of many different organizations. When you're managing inventory well, business is good, really good. When inventory is not moving or being managed well, a company can face many different struggles. Whether it's information or physical, inventory at all levels is absolutely critical. There are two basic levels of inventory management: aggregate inventory management and item level inventory management. Aggregate management takes place at the strategic level, while item level inventory management will help you gain an understanding of how much inventory you will need to order, when you should order inventory, and what items are needed. Item level management also covers safety stock maintenance. Put very simply, item level inventory management will help support the decisions that you need to make with regards to each item level inventory. This oftentimes requires an organization to have some knowledge of inventory planning with regards to different ordering points, lot or batch sizes, buffers, safety stock, and lead time planning on item level ordering. With this in mind, this series will drill into topics like boundaries and guidelines to manage your inventory at an item level, ABC classification of inventory, the impact of continuous improvement strategies on your inventory, as well as many other topics. So, get ready, because in the next few videos, you are about to learn a lot about item level inventory management. Now, before we go, we'd like to ask you a question that you can answer in the community, upcoming assignments section, or on a piece of paper from your desk. What do you already know about item level inventory management? We look forward to hearing from you, and we'll see you in the next video. There's one concept that we all need to understand in inventory management. It's the pooling of risk as well as inventory costing. Risk pooling is the idea that by pooling items together, risk can be spread throughout the pool. This helps reduce risk on a single item as well as lowers the risk across multiple items. While lean organizations focus highly on building to demand only, the reality is that many traditional manufacturers tend to consider many different factors when they are deciding how much inventory to hold and how to order or produce their inventory. One of the most basic factors that everyone must consider is the fact that there will be variability across both supply and demand. The reality is that you can never be absolutely certain how much a customer will order or how quickly you can obtain the needed supplies to produce to demand. To be clear, we are not suggesting that companies should stockpile inventory to meet unlimited variables in supply and demand. This would be a recipe for disaster. However, what we are suggesting is that if you are going to buffer against uncertainty, methods like safety stock and understanding the implications of it can be a useful alternative. With that in mind, over the next few topics, we will learn different ways that you can plan and manage your safety stock, as well as topics associated with inventory costs like item costs, carrying costs, ordering costs, stockout costs, and much more. We'll then move on to a more detailed look at the topic of risk pooling in regards to inventory management. With this in mind, we'll see you in the next module. Inventory costs typically include all the costs that are associated with the item, carrying, ordering, holding, and managing your inventory. The total inventory costs are broken down into 4 distinct categories: item costs, carrying costs, ordering costs, and stockout costs. These amounts are reviewed regularly by business owners and/or management to determine how much inventory to keep on hand at any given time. Businesses are always looking for ways to optimize inventory levels while still maintaining a healthy cash flow and not tying up resources. In the next few modules, we will discuss these 4 aspects of inventory costs. Before we do, though, we'd like to ask you a question that you can answer in the community, upcoming assignments section, or on a piece of paper at your desk. What types of costs do you see with regards to inventory management? And how do you think you can reduce those costs? We look forward to hearing your response with regards to the costs that you may be experiencing, and we'll see you in the next lecture. When you think of inventory costs, you likely think of item costs first. This is one of the basic costs that associate themselves with your inventory. When thinking of item-level inventory item costs, it typically includes the price that you pay to acquire the item as well as any costs that you may incur when purchasing. Some examples of extra costs that you may have incurred with item-level inventory as part of these costs are taxes, duties, fees, packing, and even transportation fees. Unit costs generally change based on the size of your order. For example, if an aerospace shop wants to order 1 item, it would likely be more expensive than higher volume orders. This is because you would need to buy materials, which commonly have minimum order quantities, as well as tear down and set up machines for only 1 item. When a higher volume of parts is made, the materials costs and the setup costs can be spread across the higher volume of items. The same applies to transportation fees. Shipping 1 item in a truck is much more expensive for that 1 item because it must incur the entire truck expenses. Likewise, shipping many items in a truck allows you to pool or spread the costs across multiple items. And that's it. Item costs. Now that you know what item costs are, we'd like to put your new knowledge to the test. In this module, you learned that the volume of items can make a cost go up or down. Why? We look forward to hearing from each of you in the community, upcoming assignment section, or on a piece of paper from your desk. And we'll see you in the next module. Holding costs are all the expenses a company incurs to hold inventory items over a period of time before they are used to fill orders. Inventory carrying or holding costs generally account for 15 to 30% of a business's total inventory value. This makes it all the more important to watch your holding costs. In the next few modules, we'll look at what exactly holding costs are with relation to inventory. Inventory holding costs are directly related to the volume of inventory you hold. There are 3 different elements of inventory holding costs, which are capital costs, storage costs, and risk costs. Let's look at each of these 3 categories a little closer to understand more about holding costs associated with inventory. Capital costs are the costs required to purchase raw material or inventory items, along with financing fees, loan maintenance fees, and interest. They refer to the money that is invested in your inventory. The capital costs are generally different based on the industry that you are in. For example, service industries and manufacturing industries vary significantly with regards to operations expenses, as different opportunities are available to invest in. When making decisions about capital costs and your investments, it is important to consider what opportunities there are. This is an opportunity cost analysis. Opportunity costs come into play because when looking at capital costs, you must consider what the return on your capital could have been if it was used for something other than inventory. Opportunity costs are also something very familiar to investors. When answering the question, why do investors need to consider opportunity costs when working with capital? The answer is quite simple. Investors must consider the rate of return they will receive from the opportunity so that they have some understanding of how they will continue to supply capital to an organization. And that's it. The basics of capital costs as it relates to carrying costs. We'll see you soon, right here on Lean Strategies International LLC, where you can find solutions that ignite your power. Storage costs are another important element of your holding costs. When you think of storage costs, you should think of any of the resources that you use to handle and store your inventory. These costs may be direct or indirect money spent on storage of your goods. Storage costs can also include costs for warehousing, warehouse equipment, space, rent, electricity, software, depreciation, and warehouse personnel. In most cases, storage costs are described as a percentage of your inventory value. A very important thing to keep in mind is that when you increase the volume of your inventory, your storage costs will go up too. Likewise, if you have expensive equipment, lots of unused space, or personnel, this can cause the storage costs to rise as well. On the other hand, lowering inventory frees up space, which reduces storage costs and may require the usage of less equipment, which also reduces your storage costs. With this in mind, we would like to extend a question that you can brainstorm to begin thinking about your storage costs. What items do you have at your place of work that may add to your storage costs? You can answer the question in the community, upcoming assignments section, or on a piece of paper at your desk, and we'll see you again soon. One element of holding costs is risk. Risk costs are the risk that is assumed when inventory is acquired. In addition to this, risk costs refer to loss of inventory value. This is often referred to as the shrinkage that occurs within inventory. Inventory shrinkage occurs when actual inventory levels are less than what is recorded. In general, this means something has gone wrong. Formally defined, inventory shrinkage is the depletion of the actual quantities of inventory that is on hand, in process, or in transit. This may be caused by regular reductions, scrap, deterioration, or even theft. Inventory shrinkage is calculated by subtracting the actual inventory from the recorded inventory and then dividing your answer by the recorded inventory. Then you multiply the answer by 100 to convert your answer to a percentage. This percentage can be used to have an understanding of the shrinkage that may occur within your inventory. In addition to shrinkage, risk costs of inventory also include any costs that a company incurs to manage the risks of their inventory. Expenses like warehouse security, insurance, and bars on windows or locks are some examples of inventory risk costs. You now know what risk costs are with relation to inventory. Now let's challenge your mind a bit. In this lecture, you learned how to calculate inventory shrinkage. Remember, it is calculated by subtracting the actual inventory from the recorded inventory and then dividing your answer by the recorded inventory. Then you multiply the answer by 100 to convert your answer to a percentage. With this in mind, let's assume that the actual amount of inventory on hand is $100. However, your recorded inventory is $150. What would your inventory shrinkage percentage be? We look forward to hearing your answers in the community, comment section, or upcoming assignment section, and we'll see you right back here on Lean Strategies International LLC, where you can find solutions that ignite your power. Order cost is defined as a direct labor cost that is incurred when an order is placed. Ordering costs are different from the order costs. The ordering costs are all the costs associated with the purchase order and any labor involved in inspecting the goods when received, any labor associated with stocking the received items, invoicing suppliers, and issuing payments. Ordering costs can typically vary tremendously between orders. Some examples of ordering costs might include the administrative tasks that are associated with generating a purchase order, such as computer work, communication, analysis, as well as tracking orders and ensuring that vendors receive their payments. Another example of ordering costs that are often overlooked are the costs associated with receiving orders in, inspecting or checking the orders, and ensuring that the order is handled in an appropriate way. Lastly, ordering costs can also occur internally within a manufacturing plant. For example, there may be time taken to set up your order or tear down your order. These costs can, in some organizations, be attributed to ordering costs as well. It is important to note that when setup and teardown times are excessive, a company loses capacity, and that also means they are not producing value. You now know what ordering costs are. In short, ordering costs are the costs that increase as the number of orders placed increases. In other words, ordering costs are directly related to the number of orders placed and not the volume of an order. This includes costs that may be related to different types of clerical work like preparing, releasing, monitoring, and receiving orders. It can also include the physical handling of goods, inspections, and setup costs. Now, let's stretch our minds with this new knowledge. You can share your answers in the comments section, community, or upcoming assignments section. What are some examples of ordering costs that you are aware of at your place of work? We look forward to hearing your responses, and we'll see you in the next module. Ordering costs can skyrocket when managing inventory. On one hand, you want to keep your inventory levels low so that you don't tie up cash, and on the other hand, you want to have inventory on hand so that you are placing a high volume of customer orders. Both have their positives and negatives. One of the more common ways to go about lowering ordering costs is to use an approach known as joint replenishment. Joint replenishment is a technique wherein products are ordered in groups, families, or simultaneously rather than individually. Joint replenishment is often referred to as joint replenishment model. In the joint replenishment model, several items are ordered from a single supplier, and several products share the same means of transportation. In other words, a group is ordered, set up, transported, or manufactured to pool the costs across many items, which ultimately creates a discount. A joint replenishment system is most commonly used in multi-item inventory replenishment. It helps to improve on the total cost when ordering items individually because they are grouped together. There is, however, one critical element that is necessary for joint replenishment to work, and that is there must be some kind of commonality amongst the items being grouped and replenished. By coordinating the replenishment of several items, cost savings can be obtained by sharing the cost of activities like setup and transportation between items. In many practical situations, it is desirable to jointly order and replenish items because they may share the same supplier or use the same method of transportation. And that's it for joint replenishment. Now, before we go, let's stretch our minds a bit and consider the following question, which you can answer in the comment section, upcoming assignment section, or from your desk. Do you have any activities, items, or information that you could apply the concept of joint replenishment to? If so, how would you do this? We look forward to seeing your answer in the community, and we'll see you in the next module. Have you ever wanted something to snack on really bad? So you jump up, head to the store, and when you get there, they are fresh out of inventory. Have you ever made the decision to purchase a new vehicle and you go to the dealer and the vehicle you wanted isn't there, so you go home and order it online instead? Inventory stockout costs. These are both examples of inventory stockout costs. Stockouts occur when the inventory you have on hand is not enough to fulfill the customer's demand needs. Likewise, a stockout might be when there is inventory, but the inventory is not what you wanted. As you can tell, one of the biggest costs of a stockout is lost sales, frustrated customers, and damage to your reputation. So, how do you quantify this? Well, that can be difficult. For example, in the case of lost sales in a period, it's not just the sales. You need to quantify the lost sales for that period, plus all the work that it takes to create, track, monitor, and eventually deliver your back-ordered items. But wait, it doesn't stop there. Let's say the customer is really frustrated with your stockout, and they turn to another supplier. Now your marketing of the product is waste. The space you set aside to store your inventory is waste, and you may trigger a massive bullwhip effect trying to catch up with your out-of-stock items. As you can see, the effects of stockout costs can really compound. They can also have a long-term effect on business as well. If a business is always out of stock and they cannot replenish in a timely manner to support the demands of a customer, then they begin to develop a reputation for always having stockouts, and this will turn a lot of customers away. Worse yet, If investors get wind of this frequent stock out, they may hold back on funding, which will ultimately lead to tight funds and a company's inability to scale against their competition. It seems pretty clear that stockouts, especially on the external environment, have a huge impact on an organization. So what is the impact on an organization internally? When a company experiences frequent stockout of material, subassemblies, or components internally, production is usually delayed. This can cause bottlenecks, increase lead times, and layoffs when a company doesn't meet internal goals. In addition to this, oftentimes, in an effort to contain these stockout effects, companies use additional resources to try and speed up the process, as well as spend astronomical amounts of time on setups, changeovers, and teardown of machines. This makes it all the more critical for an organization to control their stockouts. There is a fine line between carrying too much inventory and never having enough. Continuous improvement strategies like lean and educating employees in inventory management techniques and education can help an organization control the impact that frequent stockouts can have on a company. You now know what the impact of inventory stockouts might be if they aren't managed properly. We'll see you in the next module. If you hold tons of inventory, it will solve all of your problems, right? Wrong. It will solve many problems, but it may cause other problems as well. It is fairly common knowledge that carrying extra inventory will lower ordering costs. This is because with excess inventory on hand, orders for inventory do not need to be placed frequently. This is not the only impact of excess inventory, though. Indeed, when you carry excess inventory, your ordering costs will go down, but your carrying costs will also go way up. You need space, racking, packing, and advanced techniques to manage larger amounts of inventory. On the other hand, lowering inventory without the use of systems like Kanban and effective replenishment techniques can cause your ordering costs to go through the roof. You see, less inventory means you need to replenish more frequently. It also means that your carrying costs will go down. As you can see, inventory management is a balancing act. Lower inventory too much, and you will be going crazy trying to manage replenishment. Likewise, carrying too much inventory, and you tie up resources that may be used in other more effective ways. Companies must be aware of the impacts that may occur as they adjust item-level inventory levels. It is important to remember that every company will be very different. For example, a make-to-order company that has longer lead times and exists in an industry that builds complex parts may be able to manage carrying next to no inventory, while an assemble-to-order environment may need to keep buffers of components on hand. Each company should look to manage inventory in ways that work for them. Strategies like Lean, Six Sigma, and even the theory of constraints can help too. Now, before we go, we'd like to ask you a question. What would happen to your company if you lowered or increased your inventory? Share your thoughts in the community, upcoming assignments section, or with someone at your place of work. We look forward to seeing you in the next module. The Economic order quantity, or EOQ, is the ideal or most economic quantity of units that should be purchased or ordered to meet demand while simultaneously attempting to minimize the costs of carrying inventory, ordering inventory, and stocking out of inventory. The EOQ model is that of a fixed order model. In other words, the formula can be used to establish a quantity that will give a person guidance pertaining to how much of any one item they should buy or manufacture. Its purpose is so that companies can minimize the costs of ordering and carrying inventory while still balancing the needs of demand. It's been said that the model was first developed in 1913 by Ford W. Harris and has been refined many times over throughout the years. When using the EOQ model, there are a few assumptions that you must build your model with in mind. The first is that your demand is somewhat constant. Next, you must keep in mind that your costs related to inventory and ordering are constant and known, or they can be pulled from some data stored somewhere. And finally, your replenishment or production occurs all at once or in batches rather than in a continuous manner. And that's it. Economic order quantity. It's a lot of information in a very short section. So let's look at some key takeaways before moving on to more. When you answer the question, what is EOQ? You can say the economic order quantity is a company's optimal order quantity that meets demand while minimizing its total costs related to ordering, holding, and stocking out of inventory. Next, when should we consider the EOQ formula? EOQ is best applied in situations where demand, ordering, and holding costs are relatively constant with very little peaks and valleys over time. You now know what economic order quantity is, and we'll see you in the next video where we will learn a lot more.